Hey, welcome everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. I don't have my little mic test check 1 2 3 thing here. So all right. Hopefully things are showing up on your side. I'm just gonna everybody. There it is on there. I'm gonna mute that. Shut that off. Pause that. All right. That's verified. We're good there. Yeah, okay. Make sure this other one's all right. Yep, that one's good too. All right. All right. Everything's working. Cool. All right. Yeah, so I just want to get right into it. This presentation is because I've been doing a lot of research for, I'd say my research into this topic in particular started to accelerate considerably about 2 years ago, when I was staying with my folks for several months, because just I had gone through some financial challenges at the time and I needed a place to stay. And it was during that time that I realized that there was something deeper going on relative to this whole Hollywood connection, to our family specifically and our genetics, some things that just maybe for whatever reason just was never disclosed to me personally, that there's things that are connected through what I think, now that I've reviewed it more critically, I think what I'm dealing with now when it comes to all this information that I've been processing is a combination of bloodlines that all sort of merged together in a combined set of interests that were largely in unison with America. They did have values that were basically, I would say, nearly all of them, even if some of them were of questionable character from some of these groups, and I don't think that that's the majority. But I think all of them at least had a vested interest in America to some degree relative to their military experience or their loyalties, and that some of these things that I'm discovering within Hollywood that are cryptograms, encoded cryptograms that are discussed as such within the films even, and have obvious correlations to current things and that are going on, way more than you find in films that people typically associate with this thing. For example, like a lot of the Back to the Future theories, which are valid, I think. I don't think that everybody who makes those hypotheses are wrong. I think there is a lot of symbolism. I think there is a lot of timeline, whatever, going on with those films too. But the real meat of this is in the films that aren't as sexy and aren't as current and aren't as recent. You really have to go way back into the archives of classic television and classic film to really understand how Masonic cryptography and those used by other mystic societies truly operate. The things that they're doing now are just so overtly designed to trick the viewer instead of inform them, that I find it watching classic things that are connected to people like Henry Silva and Leon Askin in particular have been extremely educational, extremely relevant, and communicate things like cryptograms very, very effectively, when we're discussing how would have information been passed from one group to another if they were made aware that there could potentially be some negative event that could impact them in the future, or our country. And a lot of this became kind of like more synchronistic to me in ways that were curious, but I hadn't come to any conclusions yet about Henry Silva. But getting into it, let me show you some of this material. That's not it. Here we are. It should be on the screen, I think. Hang on. There it is. All right. So I put that Leon Askin and Henry Silva began their careers about the exact same time in an episode of the 1950 TV series Lights Out called The Mule Man. Those following my research path must know why this is a very relevant data point. This is why I've been sort of having to like take a step back and ask myself, what is it that I'm happening upon here with some of the information before I get too deep into this? Because previously, when I would find things about Leon Askin, I learned that, you know, in addition to him playing General Burkhalter on Hogan's Heroes, which would make him a Nazi, just in case you're unfamiliar with the plot of Hogan's Heroes, it was about American prisoners of war that were in a Nazi concentration camp designed to hold them, and the shenanigans and comic, you know, back and forth between them as a result of this, right? And so you know, it struck me as a little bit odd that his background story felt very phony to me. But again, I really tried to, like, before I communicate these things externally, I really tried to internally process it and say, am I going negative here? Am I assuming the worst of somebody who may have been doing something good? Frankly, as much as I wanted to believe it about Leon Askin's career trajectory, it was hard for me to believe after a while. It didn't really feel like that's what was happening. That being said, I don't know, guys. I can say that when I happened upon the work of Henry Silva and I was learning more about his roles and how they bridge to one another, my sense was that his work felt more benevolent and informative, even when he was playing a bad guy, which he did quite frequently. He oftentimes played hitmen, gangsters, or the evil villain character. And he also oftentimes played a good guy or just very charismatic, you know, smooth talker. He was really close to the Rat Pack, guys like Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, all that. He was in The Manchurian Candidate with Frank Sinatra. There's an iconic fight scene between his character, Chun Jin, and Frank Sinatra in The Manchurian Candidate, a film that deals with a lot of the topics that I do on this channel. Mind control technologies, things that are being done. If you think about Manchurian Candidate, it really was the ultimate warning film. It really was the ultimate advanced timeline warning film. John Frankenheimer's The Manchurian Candidate, warning America that at some point in time, via this simple plot line that's 90 minutes or 2 hours or whatever, that says there may be a possibility that technologies in the future may be used that will be able to hijack the human mind and turn people from, you know, loyal soldiers to America into programmed soldiers that will serve the communist agenda and worship Chairman Mao. And now what you have out in our public are people that seem to have almost bizarre alliances to the Chinese Communist Party sometimes, the way that they're promoting it, the way that they're trying to popularize this within the counterculture right now. It's almost like the CCP has become the new Che Guevara within their counterculture movement here in the United States. And I think that if you're not asking what the true origins of that is, you're not paying attention. And that's why I really started to think to myself that Henry Silva overall was probably, perhaps even unbeknownst to him, really just being given a whole series of film roles and television roles that were designed to be a larger group, many of them, not all of them, but many, you can tell early in his career, are like a series of data sets that are bridged together. One character leads to another character, leads to another role, leads to another role, crosses over to another series, to another film, where there's the plot lines even overlap. It's weird the way that this was almost designed to help create a breadcrumb trail for someone to follow and decrypt. And it's said as much within the material. And so I'm going to get deeper into that topic here. And again, guys, I know this is like, sometimes I talk about things that are a little bit more recent or current or whatever, but the reason why I entitled this tonight, Hollywood, the Other Operation Paperclip, is because we really should look at Hollywood as kind of like a larger extension of Paperclip. It's what the Nazis that we imported understood about how to do mass communication. I mean, the Defense Department obviously already understood because, and the various defense groups already understood because they were already exploiting radio programs and, you know, that type of thing for this exact purpose. Encoded messaging within a radio, like an hourly radio show that people all sat down by the radio to listen to. For military, could also be an encoded message that would tell them, you know, what their next plan would be, or the progress on a larger military project that they're working on. yes, these things did happen. It is the way it worked. It continues to this day. You're just finding that because now it's such a known thing with all the insiders that they're just extending it to all the dark economies. They're extending it to human trafficking. They're extending it to drug trafficking. They're extending it to the information routes to transmit files that people should not be, having. They're using it basically as a a cover. So let's talk about like why I think it's relevant that the initial episode of Lights Out, for example, starred both Henry Silva and Leon Askin. Now, let me be really clear here, guys. I've had somebody say to me one time that they said that they thought it was part of my role, perhaps, to restore reputations of certain bloodlines and sort of correct the record, without doing it in a way that's like so overt and requires that the people that may be connected to it would have to do themselves, and that I was just kind of doing this unbeknownst to myself in some way. That there was a breadcrumb trail set up, it was established, it was designed for quite a few of us to decrypt and unpackage. And I think I can prove, guys, that I'm not just saying this to you like out of thin air, like it's in my genetics. I'll show you really quick here. This is my so that's my grandma. She's deceased now, but she's a Silva, okay? And she's from a Silva bloodline. So are they connected? Would she be potentially a relative of the actor? Well, the thing is, she does have a brother with the same name. That's the irony in the whole thing. It's bizarre, but he's not, the person that was introduced to me as her brother is not the actor. I mean, I've met the guy, and they're not the same people. So I just want you to know that, guys. I don't just get this information like out of nowhere. It's not like it happened, whatever. And so to be clear, guys, like I was confronted with a lot of information that seemed to be maligning the Silva name about, what is it, 2021? I would say I started finding this information like about 2016, 2017. I began to research wineries that had just some strange anomalous activities connected to it that I was kind of going, yeah, I want to look into the records of that, because I actually know two people that are affiliated who told me they had familial ownership in those wineries or taverns connected to these wineries. And that I also had a relative that's close to me that worked there, as well as another relative that's more of a distant one, like married in through another person kind of thing. But the point is, they both worked at the winery where I found suspect data. And so when I started to research why that is, and I found none of their names on the paperwork, I'm going, why did my other relative tell me that this was owned by this other person's parents and their names are nowhere on the paperwork, and I can find no indication anywhere that they have any vested interest? Were they angel investors? Were they, I don't know, but I could find no evidence that what I was told by my family about the ownership of this place, where they actually had their own family working in. Again, they actually worked there, and I got false data about who owns a place where they worked. And I went to verify it. It didn't line up. It got me looking deeper into the winery. And that's when, look, guys, I don't want to get into this, but I have to. Sorry, everything's moving like bizarrely slow right now for no freaking reason. So, all right. This is where I got upset, guys, because remember, I have relatives that work at this winery. So when I'm researching what they're selling for products, I go and I find this. So I think when somebody said it may be part of my role to restore the reputation of the Silvas in part, even though, guys, I'm not a person that, listen, I'm about the integrity of information. I just speak the truth, okay? But if I put something out there where I discuss all of this information, and I never once, guys, tried to draw negative correlations. I was angry that their name, which is somewhat common, you guys, but not incredibly common. It's common, but not super common, okay? But when I saw it connected to this this wine that's described this way, again, now let's take a look up here. It says Alicio Silva. Now remember, guys, it's not just that I found this someplace at some random winery. I've got a relative that's close to me that works there. And then through my own brother, he had somebody who married into the family that claimed that some family had some ownership or something like that. And that's why they managed the tavern connected to it. Yet I could find no paperwork that verified that thing that was said to me by them. So then when I started going like, all right, well, what is going on with Tagaris Wines? What is going on with their overall operations where I have a relative working? Then I find that there's the Silva name being used, for this wine bottle. Now, that wouldn't be so bad if the fakey McFakeness of the entire background story of the wine didn't just bother me. It's just the story behind its alleged lore is all bogus. It's so phony. And I could see the phoniness of it. And it almost seemed like it was mockery. Like whoever did this was mocking the Silvas. And I'm like, well, if they're mocking the Silvas, then why are my relatives my grandma Silva, I just showed you the picture of, why are they connected to it? And why are they selling wines like this under the Silva name? If they respect the Silva name, I'm saying this, if you respect the Silva name, why would you be connected to a winery that uses my grandma Silva and all of her kinfolk with a wine description that says, take a gander at these beauties, nice legs, distinctive nose, rich, great mouth feel, luscious body, and easy on the wallet. Sound like your dream date. Sure enough, these babes might be on the younger side, but they're not off limits. Take them home for the evening. They're drinkable now, and they won't disappoint. That's a sick freaking ad. I know they're just being cheeky. They're being suggestive. It's a way to be like, ha, 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 Hey guys, I know this wine's a little on the younger side. It's not aged wine. But, when you really get down to it, it's twist cap wine. Take a look up there, guys. So I thought to myself, why would my family be connected to a winery that makes basically their cheapest bottle of wine Silva and then have a crude description like this if they have any respect for the Silva name or my grandmother? I'm asking that to anybody who, if you didn't know about that, maybe ask yourself how this is happening and why it's happening the same way that I did. And when I began to inquire further, I got no answers that satisfied me from anybody close to me. And I was basically shunned and told to get the F out. And hence, I have seen almost none of my extended family from the Cruz and Silva bloodlines since then. I'm basically the black sheep when I'm the only person that held this up as WTF family. Why is this happening and why is nobody questioning it? So I'm just putting that out there, guys, even though this is about Hollywood cryptograms. I needed to tell you this point because some of the material that I begin to navigate through involves human trafficking, blood harvesting specifically from younger women. And now when you read the description of a bottle of wine that's very close to my grandmother's name, let alone the actor Henry Silva, and it has a crude description like that, that seems to almost hint that Silvas would endorse this. And so I'm saying this to you guys as an honest evaluation of it as a Cruz who is Silvas. This person on this bottle is nobody that I know, and I believe the lore behind the bottle is completely falsified. There is no guy that's named Alicio Lee. It is just a way to cleverly put some bogus story on the bottle. I'm putting that out there. That's what I believe. I don't care if you get a crisis actor to put in front of the story and give him all kinds of credentials and a green card to show me that I'm wrong. I know how you got it all rigged. Don't even try it. Because I know who's on that bottle, and he's a friend of a family member who's about as white-skinned of a guy as you could possibly get, and they just used Photoshop to make him look like a Mexican. Now, I'm sure they could find a few Mexican guys that kind of look like that trot out in case somebody wants to verify it. So touche, guys. Go ahead and do that. But you'll never get out of the fact that somebody wrote that description, somebody slapped my grandma Silva's name on it. And now that I think that the Silva bloodline extends far beyond what anybody in this family has ever told me, I think you need to understand that it's pretty disgusting that you're trying to attribute that type of activity to the Silva name when it's really just a bunch of you mother effers that are way closer to my grandfather James Pettigrew and that whole clan that just seems to be wiping their with this name. That's why I'm angry, family. And, you know, especially to my father, I hope you effing respect what I'm doing. And I hope you begin to reach out a little bit in a more respectful way, because the way you treated me was so freaking cold that I've lost all hope in you, sir. Sorry. But I don't deserve to be the person in this family that got ostracized. I want you to question why this is so close to all these other people, and Gabe's being told by you that something's wrong with him. Something's wrong with this, okay? Something's wrong with somebody being comfortable slapping Silva on this and being in our family, knowing that it's not even real. Why did they choose Silva? Ask yourself that question. It needs to be asked. Because I don't believe they deserve to be smeared with this kind of, this is disgusting. So I didn't mean to perpetuate that. And I want to make that very clear with my material. All the things I did about strange wineries, if you watched it in its entirety, if you really understood the context of it, you would know I'm sitting in that article going, I want to know, everybody, what the F are you doing with the Silva name? Because I did love my grandma. I'm sorry, you guys, if I've always been kind of a person that's been a little bit aloof and it doesn't seem like that, but I felt very close to her. And if you know what I know about what's going on with us up here and what our things are going on, you must know that we're all connected way, way deeper. Those of us who really understand this. So if you were given the impression that I'm talking about the family, you're wrong. I'm here to restore the reputations of the ones that I know put their necks on the line to do good things and help America, help their own families, and prevent this exact misperception from occurring. Let's get into it. I'm angry, so I'm going to try to chill a little bit. All right. So again, I'm going to say this. This is from my grandma, Sarah Silva, too. Respect that, because this isn't nonsense what I just found. That's just for others, guys. I think this audience is quite respectful. Thank you for joining, everybody. Sorry, I'm not too deep into answering questions yet, but I'll get there. All right. Now I'm asking myself, what was going on with Leon Askin? If they did it to my, because I drew some negative associations to Leon Askin too. But then it occurred to me as I was finding all these Silva things, and I realized that Henry Silva's work was mostly benevolent. I had to ask myself, was the whole point of the whole Jay Burkhalter, Leon Askin thing to corrupt that whole data set too, and to make it appear as if it was more about Nazism than it was about preventing things connected to Nazism? I don't know, guys. I don't. But I'm just telling you that my ability to be open to either case when it comes to Leon Askin's work is there. He may have been doing the crude encoding for a reason. It may have been done so poorly to specifically highlight the obvious fact of what this whole thing is about. What is a true German Italian? What truly is a person's origins relative to the Jewish community? How can a person effectively make themselves look one way when they're another? And why might somebody use that as a cover who actually was Nazi for good reasons? What if Leon Askin isn't Jewish, but he also didn't have negative intentions? What if he was a person that was never down with the Nazi plan and was brought over here simply to be a person that informed on it through these Hollywood cryptograms to ensure that this Fourth Reich would not happen, that we would not be faced with another wave of Nazism and Nazi infiltration that would be done in secret within our country since 1945. And I think the people that were hip to what was going on were, in fact, from groups that were Hollywood Freemasons with defense contracts that were, in fact, had some degree of knowledge forward and backing using technologies that were being controlled largely by the Freemasons, but mostly Freemasons that were, in fact, within the Department of Defense or whatever the equivalent of DOD was relative to the 1940s. Like, I know they had more separate branches. OSS was doing a lot more before the CIA took over and things like that. Yet, I think what was going on was, and if you understand Nazis and their Bell technology, like Nazis knew all kinds of things about space-time manipulation that have not been really openly revealed yet, folks. And so my olive branch to those in my family who thought that it was purely negative associations. And again, guys, I don't know if Leon Askin is a relative either. I have intuitions that both Leon Askin used a code name basically to be in Hollywood films and is also a relative. And it's my strong suspicion that Henry Silva, even if he's not aware of it and potentially he may not be, I think that he might be a relative too. I think that there's a very strong probability and that they may have just simply told another guy, no, you are. And then he's grown up his whole life thinking that he's part of this specific bloodline mixed in, when in actuality he was swapped with the other one, because they do that, you guys. They really do. They do it for a lot of good reasons and bad reasons. Sometimes there's just people that aren't really all that great and they're just trying to hide their origins. And it's a way of getting away with it. So, and then in other cases, there are people that I think for this very reason, how would you say, for example, that you knew there was going to be some things that were going to happen, but you didn't, but you also understood that if you plant the suggestion in people and tell them, hey, this is what you should expect for the future. We have a whole map of it. This is probably what's going to happen. You actually risk creating that event without even being conscious and aware of how much you're doing it. By simply providing the warning to a group of people in 1950, for example, saying, you guys, here's the entire map that we got delivered from 2025. Somebody from 2025 sent this over this type of ham radio equipment or whatever, right? That we were able to decrypt it, and they told us about all these things that were going to happen, and we don't know if we should believe it. How do we know it's not just some foreign government that's playing tricks with our equipment or trying to tap in some weird way? We don't know, you guys, but it sounds like it's kind of legit. So is there a way that we can somehow communicate this outbound without programming the future excessively, but also providing a bit of a timeline or a series of warnings that would serve to like function as a codex and a cipher and a cryptogram or a coded messaging to say, hey guys, this is what you should expect to see. This is what might happen, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And I think that the Nazis would have had some degree of access to that technology. I think there is a possibility there could have been people within this group of bloodlines that did in fact have connections to Nazism, but did not want to be, or understood that it was wrong, or wanted to walk away, and that being a Jewish person in America escaping Nazi Germany was a much better cover than just telling people like, sorry, I used to be a Nazi, you guys. I didn't really want to be, and I was kind of forced to be, and they put me in there, and I was desperately trying to get out. That wouldn't really go over well with a lot of people. But at the same time, faking being Jewish and doing all these things doesn't necessarily go over well either, guys. So touche, I get that. So I don't know what one way or the other, guys. Again, I don't want to cast aspersions. If it seemed like I was doing that, I apologize to the family of Leon Askin, and that wasn't necessarily my intention to do that, guys. I don't know yet. I'm just open to it being in either case. And then once I learned that both Henry Silva and Leon Askin basically began their careers in the exact same project, I said, there's no way in hell that that's an insignificant data set if I already suspected like the last 3 years that they're both relatives. They got their start in the same project, you guys. It was literally the same random television show called Lights Out in an episode called The Mule Man. Relevant for a lot of reasons. Hang on really quick. All right. Let's get down into the data though. All right. Sorry about all the interpersonal things, guys, but it needs to be said because I don't want my information to ever get misinterpreted. And I always try to leave that option open, guys. I don't ever get 100% sold on one thing. But I was being given quite a few tip-offs that was pushing into negative assumptions about the data. And I just want you to know that I'm open to it being a lot of things, including like the whole thing might have just been designed by a lot of benevolent Freemasons with Hollywood connections that were partnered with the defense groups to say, like, look, guys, we don't know if this is going to happen or not, but hey, it's a whole business in and of itself. We can create films and television series and everything else like that that communicate it and everything. It can be a huge industry, all, and it did. It wound up becoming Hollywood. But I just say, like, think of it more as an extension, really, even though Hollywood existed before all of those things. What wound up happening was it just became so fully embedded with this, I think, encoded, encrypted, messaging that I think the Masons already knew about. And so I think you have competing groups trying to do it and misinterpreting the data. I don't know. It's always a possibility, guys. So I really try to stay open to all kinds of different outcomes. So sorry about that. Let me get into it. So I put here, there's lots of encoding in the work of Leon Askin. Check out that history. Here is another thread on the Leon Askin connection. So I'm not going to get deep into that, guys, because that's about like a lot of the Nazi codes. And again, it occurred to me that part of his function may have been to reveal how Nazi codes work. And he was providing cryptograms into their symbols that other people didn't even know about. That may have been it. Or it could have been that he was trying to re-put them out there as a way to gain influence and energy by using Nazi symbols. Both are possibilities, guys, because that is a practice that's done by them. And so then I put, here's another thread about how it all ties back to the Department of Energy in Hollywood, where information was passed and coded within scripts, actors' names, films, and TV regarding defense projects that function both as entertainment and messaging. All right. Now, this is where it got really weird. So I put Henry Silva in the Lights Out series. I thought I'd review the early work of Askin in more detail. He played Rudy in Crusader, 1956, in episode The Farm. My father goes by the name Rudy. My name is Cruz. So again, here it is, Rudy Cruz. If Leon Askin is who I think he is, that would be extremely relevant. And these 3 episodes that he was in, he played 2 different people, Rudy and Broussard. Well, when you brewing could also be like boiling, could it not? And those of you in the know who know why I draw an association between brews and boils, you understand what I'm talking about. And I'm not going to get any deeper into that topic right now. Notable about his appearance as Rudy in Crusaders is that it was written by Selig Lester, who also wrote many episodes of The Outer Limits, including Robert Duvall's episode The Inheritors and The Reincarnate, which is a very dark film about blood sacrifice, life extension, and soul transfer. And you'll find, if you look up Selig Lester, you'll find, I mean, that sounds like a name that somebody just pulled out of a Cracker Jack box almost. It sounds like a cryptogram in and of itself, right? But he was connected to a lot of these kind of oddball episodes of these TV series with these strange plots. And again, Leon Askin being a featured actor in them quite frequently. And this is The Reincarnate. And guys, if you ever want an education, it's a very low budget movie. But if you ever want like an education for the way some of these folks are thinking that like actually practice some of these things, that's a pretty, I mean, the whole movie's basically about how they do soul transfer and at a occult ritual level, and the way that the person that wants to have their soul transferred goes looking for a vessel, and they go looking for a virgin to sacrifice. They specifically scope these people out way in advance. They always have like an encrypted name, or there's something that has to be relevant about their location, their name, whatever. And then the process of the reincarnate is effectively like in the sacrifice of the virgin, the soul transfers between a man that dies at that moment during the sacrifice, and he enters the body of the guy that I think is the one responsible for both being in a ritual, a sex ritual with the Virgin, and committing her sacrifice. Then he absorbs the soul, I think, at the soul energy of both her and the other guy. And it's this merging of this process simultaneously between sex and death that I think creates the reincarnate ritual. And it's not that explicit of a movie, even though what I just said is pretty dark. But I'm just telling you, like, these are the kind of themes that they were dealing in the 60s and 70s with their film works really early on. And it's extremely explicit as far as its description and the way they go about it. And nearly every one of these movies has characters that have names that are very ciphered, very encoded, very much function like anagrams and cryptograms. Okay. Wait, where is that? Here it is. Okay. Askin appeared as Siebert in Operation Cicero, an episode of the 20th Century Fox Hour. Germans hope to get secret information from a man whose code name is Cicero. Keeping in mind, he also played Burkhalter on Hogan's Heroes. And again, this is the same actor doing things. And again, guys, it's a sign of the times. I mean, we had just, World War II ended in 1945. So, of course, there's going to be more plot lines that are central to Nazism and Nazi influence in the 50s as they're reviewing history. Well, not so much history, but I thought this one was interesting also because it has Ricardo Montalban, and he was like he was the star of Fantasy Island. He was also in the Naked Gun film with Leslie Nielsen. Leslie Nielsen's been in some of the same material with these guys. He did mostly comedic films in the 80s where he kind of played things straight, but he was being goofy. But this particular character, Leon Askin, is a guy that, without giving too much, well, I have to give away, guys, so spoilers if you haven't seen it, but it's like he's a person that I think appears to be on the bad side and an assassin, but it turns out that he's just taking that on as a cover in order to protect the person. So it occurred to me, guys, that some of these things may be a way of telling us now that, yeah, I know we had to play the bad guy a little bit to get you angry and to get you motivated to decrypt things at this level. And if we couldn't have somebody for you to be angry at that we knew it was safe for you to be angry at, you know, so maybe that was done that way for a reason. Sometimes people get motivated through anger, and they get motivated through this sense of there's a lack of justice. And so they may actually kind of put those things out there to inspire that in a way that may not be 100% the way it is, but it gets you to unpackage the information and redistribute it the way it needs to. And I think there might be something like that going on with some of these works is all. I don't feel like a lot of these things have negative intention. They feel just more like, you know, again, it says the Germans hope to get secret information from a man whose code name is Cicero. It mostly starred Peter Lorre, but you know, the Leon Askin character follows these guys around most of it. So I was kind of stepping through historically like their different projects, right? So I put in the series climax episode Journey into Fear, aired October 11th, 1956. Notice the ones. October 11th, 10, 11, 56. 5 and 6 is 11. 10, 11, 11. Those 1, 1, 1, 1, 1s. Always cast out the 9 with numerology. You basically have a cipher there that's exclusively all ones. Trippy, right? Leon Askin in a plot involving Nazi agents and arms smuggling. Notice a trend with the characters' names. Jose, Josetti, Johnson, played by John Forsythe. I thought that's interesting. They also had Ava Gabor in there. Well, my uncle is Jose. My brother uses the name Joe. He's also known as Joaquin, but Joe is what he uses professionally, just like my uncle Jose did. And so I thought that was super weird that this one episode that seemed to also be relevant for things involving Nazi agents and arms smuggling also had Ava Gabor. So Gabe, you know, AV is audio, video, Gabor. Anyways, there's a lot of ways to interpret that. I know she's a regular actress. That was, in fact, her name. But they like to combine the actors' names as part of the cryptograms. It was how they worked in classic films, and they still do it to this day, by the way. Sometimes an actor's name is more central to why they're chosen for the project than their talent. It's because they need the person's name to be integrated like a bit of gumbo into the project because it's part of a larger cipher, cryptogram, or I would even argue hex, depending on how you perceive these things. Yeah, it says a munitions expert goes on an arms smuggling mission to Istanbul and becomes a target for Nazi agents. Again, starring Leon Askin. There's Ava Gabor as Josetti, Anthony Dexter as Jose. So a lot of Joe, John Forsythe as Johnson, John, Josette, Jose. You know, again, Jose, you know, Jose and Josetti, but I get it. Just saying, they're really pushing that term there. So again, if my name and my brother's name are in there, they're repeatedly putting Rudy Cruz, they're repeatedly putting Joe Cruz, they're repeatedly putting Gabe, you know, or some variation on our names within an encrypted fashion, or sometimes just overtly within the characters' names, guys. Like John Frankenheimer did in Reindeer Games. Literally, the two main characters are named Rudy Duncan and Gabriel. No shit. That's a John Frankenheimer movie called Reindeer Games. Why would they do that? Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer had a very shiny nose, right? Well, Rudy is short for Rodolfo. Rudolph, Rodolfo. Why? Now you know why I say I'm Santa Claus. Soldiers of Fortune, episode Hatchet Man. This one is the one that really got me going, like, what the hell? This, and I actually have a link to this one if anybody wants to see it. It's inside the Twitter post. I have all of Leon Askin's material that I could find from classic television bookmarked and saved in a YouTube playlist anytime it's available, because a lot of it's public domain and you can get it. So if you want to watch these, just go into my channel. There's two playlists. One's called Henry Silva, one's called Leon Askin, and you can review a lot of these things yourselves and see what you think. This one aired December 9th, 1956. The episode's called Hatchet Man. Leon Askin played Charlie Wong. Charles is here's the thing, guys. I just want to be straight up with you so that I'm not beating around the bush here. I learned that one of the family homesteads that's pretty much connected to a huge part of this Cruz Silva bloodline had an unknown association. There's no road sign by one of their homesteads, but I learned that they actually lived right off of Charles Street. So I've learned now that whenever they're doing ciphers for the family, that's a big part of what they do. Just like broussard, you know what bruise is. Okay, when you bruise something, you boil or simmer. So those of you who understand the correlation between Bruce and Charles, I'm explaining to you that that's the cryptogram, and I'm trying to do my best to preserve people's privacy while still communicating this. Okay. Leon Askin played Charlie Wong. Charles is a family street. So if he's playing Charlie Wong, I think I know where Leon Askin was living. I'm just putting it that way. Plot involves smuggling a Chinese man out of London, unaware that he is a major kingpin in the London rackets and being pursued by police. And the plot line is from the series Soldiers of Fortune. The main characters are called Tim and Turbo, but it says Tim and Turbo are hired to smuggle a Chinese gentleman out of England, not knowing that the man is actually a leader of the London rackets pursued by police. And this is where the one got super interesting to me, because Leon Askin's character is all like going, oh, yes, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for your generosity. I would very much like to, meet your acquaintance. And he's like always being really nice and over accommodating and acting like he's like really humble and poor. And it turns out like he's this major kingpin of the opium trade, and this is a consistent theme, you guys, with their material. Both Leon Askin and Henry Silva over and over again had these villain characters that were like, oh, who, me? I couldn't possibly know. Mostly him. And then they turn out to either be a Nazi or they turn out to be, somebody who just double crosses by knowing how to look really, really like, pure. This is where it got really bizarre, guys. This is where I don't think anybody can deny that there's something going on, honestly. So it says Leon Askin as Charlie Wong makes a point to see his address in this episode multiple times. He goes like, I live, and he does it like this. I live at 1473 Soto Street, apartment B, second floor. Yes, I am apartment B, second floor. He's always saying 2B, apartment B, second floor, 2B, 2B. To be or not to be, right? Shakespeare, but that's a whole nother topic. But two B's, well, B looks like a 13. They love this cipher. Two B's looks like two 13s. Okay. 213 would be the birth date of the person that would be saying the line, if what I think is true is true. Moreover, one of their offspring has the same birth date, and they communicate this over and over again because two men born on 213. Got it. Okay. B looks like the letter 13. 213 equals the 13th. To be or not to 13, that is the question. I was just making a little bit of a joke there. But I can actually sometime, guys, if you ever want me to do a deep dive on this, I could actually go through the video of these clips because they're mostly public domain and I won't get copyright struck for doing it. But I'll show you here really quick. There's Leon Askin right there. Not at all a convincing Chinese-looking guy, but he does look like a relative. Just being straight up with you. To the point now where I'm convinced that one of my relatives that I didn't know very well most of my life, because I only had, we lived like over 1,000 miles from them. But I only saw him like a few times when I was a little kid. And I do think that that's probably him right there. Now I'm just trying to understand what was his function within this larger group, because if some people close to me have been doing something that wasn't so positive, I didn't understand, guys, like why people in my family were so upset with me for revealing some things. But it occurred to me that it's a catch-22 for people that are doing the right thing. And the people that are doing the wrong thing know that. They know that the people who want the right thing to happen can't say a damn thing about anything that they know. They can't reveal any of this. They can never say that these are the people. All they can do is just look at you and go like, why? Why would caring, loving people do that too? My olive branch to you guys. This is it. I'm just telling you, because maybe it was designed specifically to unpackage at the right time, at the right place, by the right person. And if anybody told me in advance, it would have spoiled the whole thing that they were experimenting with. Not experimenting with, but just waiting to have happen within timelines. And I've been getting information from the sidelines for a long time that, yes, dude, it's you. Yeah. And you can prove it because your DNA connects to all of this. It just wasn't disclosed to you because they didn't want anybody to throw you off. Other people knew that, yeah, you would be unpackaging it because there's almost no one else who could. And it's not, guys, it's not to sound self-important. You have to have the right, it has to be the bloodlines so that, yeah, others in my family could do it just based on what they know about bloodlines and families. True. But then there's all the radio frequency aspects, the EM fields, electromagnetic fields, all the technologies surrounding that, all the background surrounding that, getting to that whole level of whatever. I have that as a work history. And so I think there's something about that. There was just some knowledge that was going to happen. And then I started thinking to myself, obviously, it wasn't just my father's bloodline that knew about this. It was my mother's bloodline. And this is where I think you have the battles between the different groups. I think that my grandfather, James Pettigrew, because he is an admitted child molester, just to be straight up with you guys, he did that. He just evaded justice for it. When one person made an accusation, others within the family swooped in to say, he doesn't do that. And that's the problem. That person never got justice as a result of suing him. And so what we've kind of learned internally within this family is when you go after James Pettigrew, there's just going to be some people for whatever reason who come in to attack you. And for some strange reason, they can incentivize these people to do this, really bizarrely, to where it seems like all of James's connections and the people that do the things that he would do or are closer to his values, they're all uber protected, have shit tons of money, and are doing extremely well and have not a concern or care in the world about the rest of us. And they're a small number of people. So I think what that group is doing is separating us as a family. They're trying to get others in the family to think that I'm this horrible person that says awful, reckless shit, and I'm just not. Sorry about my language, guys. I don't mean to be dropping so many whatever bombs. I'll chill on that today because I want this to be whatever. So I'm sorry, guys, really. Because when you start getting into this information, everything like that, you almost feel like, are they just like trolling us with this? No, I think that these groups, they did it in such an overt and coded way because that's more consistent with Freemasonry and their contribution to what would be going on within the cinema industry. So I think what we have here potentially is people that were doing it bad on purpose to be whistleblowers. It's like, you know, like, yes, I'm Charlie Wong. I live at 1473. What does he say? Sorry, guys, I screwed up. He's like, I live. Yeah. Please, Charlie Wang, address 1473 Soto Street, apartment D, second floor. And his acting is just really off kilter. It's just kind of bad. And he's capable of being better. So the way he's doing it is designed to anchor in your mind the message for you to unpackage. So now, this is when I got convinced that look, I'm never 100%, guys. I always stay open to other possibilities because this is a pretty fantastical thing that would be happening if it's true. And I want to be open to other reasons why or how it could be happening. And I don't want to shut myself off to those possibilities. But let's take a look at where 1473 Soto Street maps to. Not that many places. South Soto Street is near Boyle Heights in Los Angeles. North Soto is near Ricardo Street and Zonal Avenue. My father's brother is named Ricardo. He's my uncle. And they were both raised on Boyle Avenue. My great-grandmother was Zona Letitia Hatfield. Zonal Avenue. Zona L. Then there's an episode called Thriller starring Henry Silva where there's an incantation ritualistically that even has the name Zona within the cipher, which is even trippier. That's when I started going, yeah, there's something way, way deeper going on with these competing bloodlines where they kind of merged but did not really like each other. And I think that that's kind of what's gone on. And honestly, guys, if I was to choose a side on this battle, it would not be the James Pettigrew clan. And I don't think that even a lot of people that would be within his bloodline would choose him. I think they'd be like, that's effed up. So I just want to say that, you guys. I don't think all of you Pettigrews have issues. I don't have problems with all of you Hatfields or anything else like that on that end of things. Wilsons, Hatfields, Pettigrews, I'm not damning all of you because of this any more than I would Cruzes and Silvas. I'm asking what's going on with the larger work, and I think I figured it out. I think that they were all involved with the Hollywood and defense things, and it was a partnership, and it was the way for like probably DOD related people were saying, you guys are just going to have to get along and work it out because we need this to be done. And so I think they all set aside their whatevers. They made agreements. They had offspring with each other. And I think that having offspring with competing families and enemy bloodlines was a way to ensure peace between these groups to say like, well, we're not going to try to decimate all your people and you're not going to try to decimate all our people because we all have our own kin in the game. Skin in the game, kin in the game. They have kin in the game. So the point where you wouldn't want to completely decimate the other group or bloodline all entirely, right? So I just wanted to show you my results here when I look up that address that I actually got South Soto, North Soto, you know, then they have Day Soto, which is interesting for other reasons, but hang on really quick. Then when you look at the actual maps, so there's one Soto Street, right? Not two whatever, right? But that's where one maps to. That's where another maps to. The one that really tripped me out, though, was this. Again, right there by 1473 Soto is my uncle's name, Ricardo. And then you just scroll just a little bit up the street there, and there's my great-grandmother on my mother's bloodline. So one's my father's bloodline, one's my mother's bloodline, one's Ricardo, one's Zonal. Ricardo's a pretty common name, guys, but Zona L, that her name is Zona L. Wilson Hatfield. Zona Letitia Wilson Hatfield. That was her name. Kind of weird. All right, as later in the episode, the main characters are told to rendezvous at 1211 River Street. Several exact matches to that address as one would expect, but one in Phoenix, New York, I thought stood out since River Phoenix's brother is Joaquin Phoenix. And again, guys, remember, this episode was already communicating some pretty in esoteric ways, like not only my great grandmother's name, Zona, which is not that common, but Zona L, zonal, Zona L. All right. So now we have another decrypt when you go 1211 River Street. It winds up being in Phoenix, New York. My brother is actually named Joaquin, even though he goes by the name Joe. So I thought, whoa, River Phoenix, his brother's Joaquin Phoenix. It's in River Street, Phoenix, New York, River Phoenix. River Street, Phoenix, New York, River Phoenix. His brother's Joaquin Phoenix. My brother's Joaquin. 1211 also makes the word Abba, even though it's not two B's. I gave my thoughts on this. Oh wait, that was like, okay, guys. So I did a whole nother presentation. That's nothing visual like this. It's mostly just me kind of telling you like what my thoughts are on things, you know. So I put Leon Askin had dozens of classic television episode guest appearances. I'm trying to find as many as possible for myself and others who might be curious and who can locate additional ones. I feel like this work is very relevant to larger research. And so I'm just throwing that out there, guys, before I move on to the Henry Silva material, that's really what got me looking deeper into Leon Askin lately and thinking that there may have been more to what was happening there, that they may have actually done this so that my entire family and me, that we wouldn't have an argument, that we would all sort of wake up one day and kind of say like, hey, did you know this? Did you know this? Here's the truth. Here's the secrets. Don't get upset with each other. Figure it out. Why aren't you open to that, you guys? I'm sorry that it's weird, and I'm sorry that it came from old Gabe the Black Sheep, but that's just the reality. All right, just to give you a quick background and know kind of what began the more esoteric aspects of me delving deeper into their connection to classic television, sci-fi horror film series in particular, and all these other things. So there's The Outer Limits. And I said that there's something going on here because I was finding that they were dropping addresses and locations and information in episodes of The Outer Limits, which is a science fiction series very similar to the Twilight Zone that was back in 1963. They did a reboot in the 90s where they did several seasons, very similar themes in those two. Oftentimes, The Outer Limits dealt more with like, they were more into monsters, I would say. There always had to be a ghoul, a monster, or some type of ghost or specter connected to each episode, almost always exclusively. It was like a big thing for them. Whereas Twilight Zone didn't require those as plot mechanisms. You know, they didn't go that deep into it. But The Outer Limits delved heavily into topics involving radio frequency transmission. People that would do the opening episode is called the Galaxy Beam, where they do this high frequency transmitter test and wind up broadcasting globally. And then the signal winds up, because of the way he's amplifying it, off into another part of the universe and makes contact with a hydrogen-based life form that tells everybody that everything else in the universe is infinite energy and that all the things that are on Earth are not allowed to interact with the hydrogen-based universe because we're carbon-based life forms, and that we perceive death, which is something that they don't do. They don't even have death. They have dissipation of energies and things like that, but they don't believe in any of those things. There's no word for death. It just doesn't happen. Anyways, that got me thinking like, whoa, this is obviously some pretty serious things, especially because the television station was like WGBE or something like that. And again, my name is Gabe. I was like, wow, okay, maybe I should look deeper into this because they seem to be saying Gabe a lot. Gabe, 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 Gabe. All right. I'll just look into it. Maybe it means nothing, but you know, it made me like smile, and I'm like, fine. I see my name in something. I'm going to follow the rabbit or the breadcrumb trail. Follow the rabbit hole, I guess. But I like breadcrumb trail because that makes more sense. All right. So there's an episode called Behold Eck, where this woman gives the addresses of 3 customers. One is 27 Rossmore, one is 1242 Doyle Street, and one is 724 Minden. The names of each person at each address is Rita Morgan, Kowalski, and George Wilkinson, respectively. And so I wound up just adding all of these addresses to some mapping software to see what they were going. Interestingly, guys, I have found nearly all 3 of these addresses after I did deeper research after this Twitter post in the town of Binghamton, New York. they almost all have a connection to being. What's even weirder is lines from other locations that I've mapped that were connected to Henry Silva projects in the 80s also looped back to locations referenced in early episodes of The Outer Limits. So literally, I'll give you an example. One of the addresses that's provided in here, when you go to it, I had already drawn a 33-degree line from the Peachtree Street Tower in Atlanta, where Henry Silva is shot at the end of Sharky's machine and flies out the building. I drew a 33-degree line from that building, and it intersects to these addresses provided in these early episodes of The Outer Limits. It literally goes like a beeline from where Henry Silva died in that tower right out to his character is Billy Score is the character, right? It's really weird. And so that piqued my curiosity, because I was like, this doesn't feel like it's just a coincidence. This is really difficult to explain again, so I don't want to go too deep into it. But again, guys, this is the slide card, in case you're wondering, where in the episode they put Rita Morgan, 27 Rossmore, John Kowalski, George Wilkinson. Those are the addresses, okay? That's the episode. If you're curious and want to do your own research, it's called Behold Eck. All right, so I put 2 episodes of The Outer Limits featured Henry Silva, not Behold Eck, right? But 1242 Doyle Street aligns east of the Atlanta building used to film Sharky's Machine, where Silva played the hitman. He also played Father Gabriel. My name is Gabriel, obviously, on Breaking Point, about the same time as his Outer Limits appearances Chino Rivera and Juan Mercurio. So it's almost like they intentionally had him play this role of Gabriel about the same time as he would be in these 2 appearances as Chino Rivera and Juan Mercurio, almost as if it's like a way to say, Gabriel, maybe look into this. By the way, he played Joaquin just after playing Gabriel. That's a hint from my brother. Maybe you don't know something that you thought you did, or maybe there's some things you could afford to know. Maybe Gabe's little method of doing this decrypt is not so weird, is it? It might actually be something that you might want to show a little bit of respect for. Just saying. Now, I said I would dismiss all this as a coincidence. If my mother's father, James Pettigrew, he's the abuser in the family, hadn't taken me and my sister to see Sharky's Machine in the movie theater when I was 7 years old. While I was in Atlanta about a year ago, I watched Sharky's Machine again, and I mapped the filming location and alignments. So again, guys, that's when, while I was in Atlanta, I watched the movie that's set in Atlanta. It's about the Atlanta Vice Squad, starring Burt Reynolds, who's in a bunch of these timeline movies. I promise you, it's really weird how often he appears in them or is involved with the production. And then again, those are the addresses, 210 Peach Street and 265 Peach Street. And you can say tall tower or man falls from building. That was the Henry Silva character. That's why it's notable, guys. It doesn't just align. It aligns at 33 degrees from the building where Henry Silva's character dies, that I mapped. And almost nobody thinks to map these things. I'm one of the only people that's doing it this way. Proof this all started last year. I was staying at a Howard Johnson in Atlanta when the internet failed. There was a widespread outage at the time. I rediscovered Sharky's Machine and began mapping the filming locations, esoteric azimuth alignments like the 33-degree angles, north, south, east, and west. And I actually have evidence that it was me doing this over a year ago, dated June 15th, 2020. I even made a joke about it on Twitter. You can see there, I said, I just wanted to watch Sharky's Machine, and just then the internet slows way the hell down. For the love of Burt Reynolds and Henry Silva, give me back my bandwidth. And the gods looked down upon Gabriel and said, let it be. And his bandwidth returned. See, I was making a joke because I was like, what the hell, man? I'm trying to watch this movie. So lately, what I added on to this lately was Sharky's Machine. I screwed up my thing. Okay. Sharky's Machine also acknowledged the value of understanding ciphers and cryptograms in crime solving. In a pimp's left behind items, they find 7 mostly fake sounding names, and each with 7 digits exactly, and quickly deduce that they must be 7-digit numbers in addition to the code names of women. And so you see Bernie Casey going, every name is 7 letters. Adriana, Domino, Ophelia, Sayaquan, Tiffany, Elspeth, and Catherine. That's weird too, guys, because not only is my Aunt Catherine, who's married to my Uncle Ricardo, referenced in the other episode, that's exactly how she spells Catherine. And then you see him, Arch, this is Bernie Casey's character. He's doing the decrypt on Adriana by putting the phone number that's associated with, when you look up ABC, it's 123, right? So he's doing the decrypt there. And I put, funny, just like when I discovered Sharky's machine codes and Asthma in Atlanta last June, today it's also thunder and lightning storms. Again, guys, there's a weird occurrence that sometimes when I have like an epiphany like this, there's an associated thunderstorm. It just starts to go, or when I resonate with somebody or something like that, and they're getting something, like rainbows appear or like clouds come down from all over the freaking place. It's a really strange thing. And sometimes these events coordinate with people that are like a few thousand miles away from me and things like that, where they just go like, yeah, I was just thinking about you. Or, yeah, I remember I was watching your thing when that happened or whatever. And I'm like going, dude, it was like all day long that rainbows are opening up around me. It was really weird. So I put, there's many scenes in Sharky's machine involving concepts of line of sight surveillance, positioning from one building towards another to determine what's going on. So I think this was a clue. By constantly stressing surveillance, they're encouraging you to look up the mechanisms. How could they look from this building and see in the building across? Have you looked into it? Do you know how to research that? How do I know? Not from doing surveillance, obviously. I learned from the wireless industry. That's how I learned how to do everything we're talking about. For example, this thing I'm doing with the 33-degree lines on tops of the buildings, you could have that situation with tower design where I would just simply put into the software, hey, I need to see over northeast, and it just so happens that northeast also points 33 degrees. I'm going to aim an antenna that way, and I just need to see how that's going to look on a coverage map. So that used to be my job, and that's why I learned to do it with Hollywood films. I just apply esoteric principles of like ritual practice and magic, which I'm not practicing really. I'm just using what they use to find out what they're doing within the filming locations. And I observed that they often line up very precisely at 33 degrees, 213 degrees, 303 degrees, and 123 degrees to multiple places. So I always add these angles. What is an angle? Well, a lot of people think that the word angel is another way of communicating angles. They fly. They go in angles. They fly in various ways. Well, planes will fly at angles, right? Okay. Angels fly angles. Angle, angel. This is where it got trippy, guys, because part of the information that connects it to all to a relative of mine involves the film Karate Kid, that also has one of these esoteric alignments from the Manzanar facility that points directly at a relative of mine's house that lived in Henderson, Nevada. So again, that person is the one that I went to see Sharky's machine with. She now lives in Henderson. And she saw that movie when she was like 7 or 8 years old. And the guy makes a point to say, hey, what's your name there? My name's Henderson. That's it, guys. It's the most random thing. Sharky is in a hurry. He's trying to get to the top of the building. He goes to the security guard. Instead of him just flashing his badge, he's like he goes, I'm Atlanta Vice. I need to get up to the top of that building. He doesn't do that. He goes into the building and he's like I'm Atlanta Vice or something like that. He goes, hey man, tell me something. What's your name? And he goes, my name is Henderson, sir. It's the way that they structured that dialogue. It wasn't for that. This film is filled with weird, bizarre, disjointed dialogue that makes no sense. Motivations that don't make sense. Loops of dialogue that are very bizarre and surreal where you're like, why did he say that? It's the encryption. It's the encoding. It's there specifically to make you go, that doesn't fit. It's a puzzle. Okay, I get it, guys. Him just asking him his name is not that remarkable. It's that his name was also Henderson, and that the scene did not require him having the courtesy of asking the police officer's name. He could just look on his badge or something else like that, or the security guard. He could just say like, hey man, I need to get to the top of your building. I'm Atlanta Vice. But no, he goes to this long thing of, what's your name? My name is Henderson. You really got to think about that, especially when I told you that they took me and my other relative to see this movie in the movie theater. And it is completely inappropriate for 7 and 8 and 9-year-olds. There's no way in hell you would take a 7 or 8-year-old to watch a movie about the Atlanta Vice Squad going after a mafia who has sex slaves. And that the main character in surveillancing one of said sex slaves falls in love with her and feels like a need to protect her. A strange movie to go take some little kids to. But again, James was kind of twisted, so it doesn't surprise anybody to hear that. I'm saying, though, that that's I said to you guys, like, when I talked about this last time, I'm just saying that James obviously he knew he had to do this, yet he was also using the larger program. He was exploiting it. He seemed to be doing things with various trades where he was manipulating it using the same ciphers and codes. And so if you're the Department of Defense and one of your people decides to go rogue on the sidelines and use all your same cryptograms to do criminal activities, you can't reveal it. It's the perfect plan. I mean, as far as sinister bullshit goes, yeah, if you're involved with this and you suddenly take all the methods and use them for criminal actions, the military's got their hands tied because they risk losing the whole great work that they've been doing for decades if they just even acknowledge that it's a thing. So you got to get to the point where it's revealed, right? And that's why I've been like feeling like there's something to this. So I put, don't forget that Silva was in 2 episodes of The Outer Limits, 3 addresses dropped in the TOL episode it's Beholdek. I made a typo there. One of which aligned due east of the Peachtree building. Mapping Doyle Street and Google Earth defaults to this alignment. I'm leaning towards this not being a mere coincidence. Take a look at the plots of Henry Silva episodes. All involve psi research, military projects, and concepts of teleportation and electronic signals decoding. The Outer Limits connection got weirder today as I started reviewing another episode of the 90s reboot, Season 1, Episode 21, Birthright, wherein a Senator Adams is deceived by a chemical executive named David Pettigrew. Keep in mind, my grandfather is the one who took me to see Sharky's Machine, is named James Pettigrew, all right? Says, James Pettigrew took us to see Sharky's Machine, which led me to this. I never understood why the hell he took a couple of little kids to see a movie about the Atlanta Vice Squad busting a mafia sex slave trade with Henry Silva as their hitman. He also appeared on 2 episodes of The Outer Limits. Again, guys, I'm just showing you really these Outer Limits episodes really are passing the names of my family. It's happening. Dave Pettigrew. Again, if we had really, really super common names in every case, I would say like whatever. But no, the way that they're lining up is too freaking specific, and they're even anchoring it to birth dates in the same episodes. Henry Silva, he's not just in any room in his episode. He's in room 79. That's my birthday. And again, then they just have these random lines where Bernie and Burt Reynolds, as they're looking for Henry Silva, they just like talk really slowly back and forth. And I would say, guys, if you do watch Sharky's Machine for research, pay specific attention to the dialogue that goes on between Burt Reynolds and Bernie Casey, especially. He plays Archie. These two guys are constantly having bizarre dialogue that goes on and on and on for no reason. It makes the movie last twice as long as it's supposed to, and I've never got it. So he put, I was by myself in the cruiser that day. So again, making a point to say, I know police cruisers are called that. That's nothing to be whatever, but they're making sure to say cruiser over and over again in the scene. Again, Henry Silva was in these 2 episodes, Tourist Attraction and The Mice. Here we go into the Outer Limits ones that connects Henry Silva. This is his uniform in the episode, okay? His inmate number, it says, Henry Silva's appearance in The Outer Limits, The Mice, where he plays prison inmate Chino Rivera, used as an experiment, has many synchronicity events too. His inmate number is 13790. Again, guys, I told you, my father's got the 13, him and his father, 213. I'm 79. So the 2 elders born 213. He's making sure to put the 13 in there. The 79, that's his prison number. And without getting into too much detail, it's hard to read and everything like that unless you get deep into it. That's 13790. I did too much of a zoom on it, so sorry if that's not legible for you. And then what really tripped me out is I have, guys, as I've shown you over and over again, I basically carry a green Apple iPhone. That's what I have as my device that I do all my research on when I'm not using my laptop. It's all done on this green Apple. I use a green Apple to do a lot of my research and post on Twitter about this exact topic. So the fact that he is in a plot involving timeline technology, involving electromagnetic frequencies being run through a human test subject, which is consistent with my research, weird, right? And then Henry Silva says, well, I'm ready as sure as God made little green apples. He makes him, know, and I'm ready for the experiment. Okay. I put, I'm still trying to research this Henry Silva thing seriously. Here is another slide from the Outer Limits. Again, Silva is the test subject being sent electromagnetic fields in room 7-9, and I was born on 7-9. All right. And there you see that's the woman. She's standing in front of the door. And by the way, I was having a hard time getting a freeze frame of it, but it says like neokinetic research underneath that. Number 7-9, neokinetic research. Project Rainbow Philadelphia Experiment Montauk is basically the types of things that they're delving into within that room. Everything to do with like sending high power electromagnetic fields through a human subject and then either transporting them to another timeline or making them disappear temporarily, which is what the Philadelphia experiment was attempting to do. And many speculate they wound up doing something different. They actually placed some of the men and women in that ship. I think it was almost entirely men, but they wound up getting transported to another timeline is the theory. And so that's what Outer Limits is delving into. By the way, folks, I have lots of documentation that specifically links Westinghouse Corporation, who my grandfather, James Pettigrew, who took me to see Sharky's Machine, worked for. My grandfather, James, who took me to see that Henry Silva movie, worked at Westinghouse. Westinghouse is connected to Project Rainbow. I will not listen to another freaking relative of mine roll their eyes at me and act like I am coming upon no information of any specific relevance. Those of you who want to hold on to that position, check yourself. Check yourself. Because I'm not the bad guy in this situation. I'm going to say it again. All right. So that was the whole story of, what led me onto that path. So let's get deeper into this whole thing with Leon Askin. I started finding guys that they also both together, as they got further into their career and further away from the 50s and 60s, as they got into the 70s, their movies increasingly dealt in themes of vampirism and themes of human harvesting. Oftentimes there was one plot line that literally is all about, harvesting blood and taking it to another planet for a species that lives off of our young blood and things of that nature. When you add in the fact that Leon Askin played Burkhalter, the same series of wineries that's connected to close family members of mine, one is named Book Walter. Burkhalter, Book Walter. I don't think that was a coincidence. If I find a film that deals with themes of vampirism or human harvesting, especially with Askin or Silva in it, I promise you it's relevant and needs to be analyzed seriously. Here's another quote from one of the films that Silva was in, where there's vampire themes. It's there's a Brotherhood of Death. Again, if Henry Silva or Leon Askin are in a film with dialogue like this, it's relevant and it needs to be looked at deeper. It doesn't mean you draw negative associations to the two individuals. They're actors. Okay, that's got nothing to do with it. But you need to look deeper into the plot lines of their characters because there's information likely being dropped. There could, in fact, be something going on right now relative to these wineries that are close to J. Burkhalter, Book Walter, and all those other things, wherein something of this nature is going on. What would lead you to believe that? It's literally in the script of this film. Vampires? We dislike that word. The Brotherhood is something far nobler than present superstitions give it credit for. There's nothing supernatural about us, Kate. We're simply a superior race of people who over the centuries have proved that the drinking of the vital human essence confers youth, power. It's the ultimate aristocratic act. So they see it as a privilege of the elite and of their brotherhood to be capable of using the rest of us as a harvestable resource that they can just take in whenever they want to. Henry Silva being involved with Australian production of this type of film will also prove to be quite relevant when people close to me understand the film's connections to families of powerful bloodlines. Actors with international recognition, such as American Henry Silva and British David Hemmings, were imported for this Australian film production in order to boost the picture's saleability in foreign markets. Both these actors play characters who are doctors. Both have billing down the cast order at 4th and 6th, respectively. This lower billing order for imported. Anyways, sorry guys, I didn't need to read that. But anyways, the point is Henry Silva did productions in Australia. Why would that be relevant? Because from my own father's mouth, and he knows this is true, he got my brother's help to find these people. We learned about 10 years ago or so, and then they began a search for them. We learned that the Silva bloodline within our family is in Australia. Yes. And it got there through one of my great uncles that would be the brother of my grandmother, Sarah Silva. He's now deceased, so I don't mind telling you this, but he did in fact have offspring in Australia, and I now know that I have some like type of second, third cousins or whatever that would be his offspring that are in fact Australian. How about that? All right, and they're Silvas. They actually go by the Silva name. Shift gears to Silva's early projects. 1955's Darkness at Noon. Coded messages discussed as key piece of the plot line. His work is always relevant. I haven't watched this episode yet, but it says during the Stalinist purges in Russia in the 1930s, a committed Bolshevik named Bubashov sits in prison having been betrayed by the cause he fought for and goes over his life via a series of flashbacks and coded conversations with other condemned prisoners. So that wouldn't be in the plot unless there was a good reason for it. All right, speaking of code, Alfred Hitchcock's Presents is another cryptographic mastermind at work in Hollywood. Henry Silva in one episode plays Harry Silver. That one, probably those who do deeper research probably know what's going on with that cipher. There's way more to it, and I'm not going to get into it right now, but you probably do. Henry Silva in Alfred Hitchcock Presents was in this episode called The Better Bargain, where he basically plays a hitman. And his character is basically being contracted to potentially, if this guy who's kind of rich and has a younger wife, he thinks that she's cheating on him. So he says, if I find evidence that this is in fact happening, that she is double crossing me, then yeah, I'm going to hire you to go kill her and the guy that she's sleeping with. So obviously it's Alfred Hitchcock, so there's a plot twist, which I won't reveal. Ocean's 11. Roger Cornell is the character played by Henry Silva. So it occurred to me that there is something going on with the word Leon. Leon, Mexico is in Guanajuato. That's where a good portion of my family, I guess, originates from on the Mexican side, is Leon, Guanajuato, Mexico. So the fact that I've got a grandfather, that's from that region. Anyways, guys, maybe Leon Askin was just revealing information about his bloodline. I don't know. But about someone else's bloodline, and it wasn't his. I don't know, guys. But my intuition is that he's a relative. And that Roger Cornell's character in Ocean's 11, well, a cornea is obviously in your eye, right? Corona is happening right now. The coronavirus is happening right now. But also Corleone was the godfather, Don Corleone. So I think that Roger Cornell is kind of a cryptogram and a ciphered name for attribution of events, things we need to look deeper into. I know look, guys, for a long time now, for a couple of years, actually for years now, I was having known family members. One is deceased now, was constantly putting the book The Godfather like in my face, looking at me like, you got to understand this. You need to understand this. That was around the same time that another relative revealed to me that they were in the Freemasons in Mexico back in the 70s. I won't say who they are, but they told me that. So I don't think I'm wrong about anything, you guys. I just don't. I mean, I might be wrong about some of the details, but I think the overall conclusions that this leads into some larger form of esoteric timeline technology, I don't think is at all bizarre or abstract or would be something to be mocked. It's just difficult to understand. but there is a scientific explanation if you understand the trinity of human energy, brainwave relative to time perception. Yeah, you can go off cycle, and you could be more in clock with another timeline than you are in the existing one, but still be walking around with people. You can still be a functional person, but really clocked into another timeline entirely, even on a subconscious level. Yeah, you're physically here, your light body's here, but you're clocked somewhere else. And I think that there is something that's gone on with a lot of people where they've literally been aggressively EM field, like electromagnetic fields, placed on their bodies to where now they're simply a little bit off cycle. Their light body remains here, but something going on relative to the way they experience time, even though it's staying static with the rest of us here the same way, their experience is going to be different. They're not going to be having the same whatever by virtue of this manipulation of their EM fields. I think this is known. Cinderella by Jerry Lewis reworks the Cinderella plot with Silva playing Maximilian. So again, in this one, he's like one of the evil stepsisters, but it's like a male form of Cinderella. Henry Silva played 2 different characters on 3 episodes of The Untouchables about Elliot Ness. They called them The Untouchables. Those unfamiliar, it was kind of like about Al Capone. There's a movie made by Brian De Palma called The Untouchables. That was Kevin Costner played Elliot Ness going after Robert De Niro as Al Capone. That movie is very, very relevant. That's specific interpretations of The Untouchables by Brian De Palma, very relevant. Brian De Palma, hugely a part of everything I'm talking about. And if I have time, I'll get deeper into that. Henry Silva played 2 different characters on 3 episodes of The Untouchables. One was little Charlie. Remember, guys, Charles, I said, is a cipher used for the family. Charles Sebastino. Sebastino really means Sebastian. All right. I happen to know there's a director right now that's named Sebastian Silva. Now, if he didn't look exactly like one of my cousins, I wouldn't even mention it. I'm just saying that he does. I don't know the guy. He's allegedly from Peru, but I even question that as his background. I think he's actually from America, and he's using that as a code name similar to the way these other people do. Just saying. I think that whatever these people are accessing has something to do with remote viewing and timelines. And by the way, if you don't believe that, guys, I'm going to remind you, a family member of mine was involved with the lab that had sole responsible for remote viewing research. That was my brother. He was at the exact company, Science Applications International Corporation. You can look all this up on the Freedom Information Act library. He was there at that company, even though he may not have been doing that kind of work. I'm just telling you, he worked at the company that had sole responsible for the research involving remote viewing, anything to do with the Stargate project, anything to do with Real Flame, Sunstreak, any of the sub-projects. My brother worked at the company when the projects were active. They decommissioned Stargate in 1995. He was at that company that was handling 90-some% of the research between 1993 to 1999. And I'm supposed to believe that this is all coincidence. Hey, Gabe, you got potential. Just go along there, little brother. Dude, wake up. You're either like willfully ignorant, or maybe you had to stay quiet about it or something like that. But stop being a dick about it. That's all I'm going to say. Seriously, you got to look deeper. Or you need to figure out what's going on with those wineries, bruh, because that ain't close to me. That's close to you. You. It's out at Hanford, nowhere near Gabe. Why are you close to this, dude? Why won't you explain it? Just asking. It shouldn't be incumbent upon me to do it. So anyways, on The Untouchables, he played little Charlie Sebastino and the Joker. Ah, who played the Joker last? Who played the Joker last in the Batman series? Who played the Joker? I won't wait for you to answer. Joaquin Phoenix played the Joker. Are you starting to figure it out, guys? What I say earlier, River Street, Phoenix, New York. Who was River Phoenix's brother? Joaquin Phoenix. The Mark of Cain. The episode that he was in The Untouchables is The Mark of Cain. Cain and Abel. Joaquin, Gable. He played Cain on other projects as well. So by the way, it's a reoccurring theme. Either Silva will be like on a series where it's called like Cain's 100, where he's a guest star. On the Untouchables, he's in the episode Mark of Cain. There's an address right there on that card, by the way. He was also in an episode called The Noise of Death, The Whitey Steele Story, and The Mark of Cain. Henry Silva was Ricky Hamilton on the Joey Bishop Show episode entitled Ring a Ding. This is where it got really, really, really interesting. He was Ricky Hamilton. Anybody who knows what the hell's going on with me right now from a distance, I can't talk about everything here, guys. Like, if I could tell you how synchronistic these things truly are, I can't do it without like being super direct, and I can't be that direct right now. Let's just say that if you're in the DoD and you're looking off from a distance, you know what I'm saying is true. You know these things are synchronizing and lining up. Right after that, Henry Silva played Ray Riley on Kane's 100 in an episode called The Fixer. Remember this because he plays Cain or roles similar with biblical lore behind Cain and Abel crossed with mob and mafia themes. And again, remember, in Cain and Abel, Cain is jealous of his brother Abel and kills him. Many know Henry Silva from his role as Chun Jin in the John Frankenheimer film The Manchurian Candidate, a film that is especially relevant today as it delves heavy into mind control and programmed assassins with a major Hollywood production. Disclosure is a consistent theme. If you come 5 minutes after this picture begins, you won't know what it's all about. When you've seen it all, you'll swear there's never been anything like it. Frank Sinatra, Lawrence Harvey, Janet Leigh, The Manchurian Candidate, also starring Angela Lansbury, Henry Silva, and James Gregory. This is about programmed mind-controlled assassins. That's Henry Silva playing Chun Jin. He's in a fight with Frank Sinatra. You see it says a former prisoner of war is brainwashed as an unwitting assassin for an international communist conspiracy. That's him there basically as Chun Jin, Angela Lansbury as Rose Cheney, Eugenie Rose Cheney, Raymond Shaw. I mean, you guys understand the encoded names yet? All right, back to Alfred Hitchcock. He appeared in another episode as Bill Grant, which is consistent with the things that are close to the Hanford Nuclear Reservation that's on the Franklin-Grant County line. It's in an episode of Out and Out for Oscar. This one I thought was really bizarre, guys, because this episode in particular, talk about the Don Corleone Godfather connections. That's Henry Silva there in the background, right? But this close up here, this guy here, that guy you see on the phone. Spoilers here, guys. If you've ever seen The Godfather Part 1, there is a epic plot line that's constantly referenced in other films, The Horse's Head, where Robert Duvall, as Tom, the lawyer for the family, is sent to this film producer, played by the guy you see right over here. I don't know his name offhand. I'll have to look it up. But he's played by that exact actor. And so Robert Duvall's character goes to him and says, hey, there's this guy, Johnny Fontaine. He's a friend of the family. And the Don Corleone says that if you put him in this movie of yours, you know, you'll always be able to rely on him for a favor. He'll do this for you, do that for you, and everything like that. So this guy is like going, you know, he's got a bitter grudge against Johnny Fontaine because allegedly Johnny Fontaine, Don Corleone's friend, stole a woman away from him. And he's hated Johnny Fontaine ever since. So he says, I'm never going to give that guy a job in my studio. It'll never happen. I want you to listen to me. You tell these people to go back to where the hell they came from. And I don't want you ever to come around here. You tell him to go fuck himself. You know, he just like goes off on Robert Duvall. And he's so angry about what he's being asked to do by the mafia. And he basically tells them like, you'll never get me to do anything for you. So he's like, okay. The Don, he likes to hear bad news right away. So I'm going back right now. And so the Don goes back to you know, whatever and everything like that. But see, he, hang on. And the next day, this guy basically wakes up to it, the prize horse that he was like showing off earlier in the film. He has like the best horse that he's showing off to Robert Duvall's character. Like, look at all my amazing things that I have. These are all top-notch Clydesdales, and you know, I have the best and finest things in life. And so the next morning he wakes up to that same horse he was showing off. Its head is in bed right next to him. And that's kind of how the mafia sends messages that, you know, you're next if you don't do what we say. And so, of course, the guy immediately puts Johnny Fontaine inside his movie. I'm going to remind you guys, Johnny Fontaine, one interpretation of Fontaine would be Fontana. Fontana is the town, in fact, where all this family's from. Fontana, California. That's where a lot of my family's from. Johnny Fontaine, Johnny Fontana. You can understand why I look deeper into things. That's all. All right, 1963, A Gathering of Eagles. Silva plays Colonel Joe Garcia. Notice how Kevin McCarthy plays Kirby. The CIA headquarters is, in fact, near Kirby. And there is a Thompson-Kirby streets that interconnect to what I believe to be CIA operations in Portland, just so you guys understand there. Well, look, is it CIA-directed operations? I'm not sure in that sense, but it's shady as hell, and it's consistent with things that they do to protect themselves. So I'm going to call it a theory. Sorry to be too tinfoil on that one, guys, but it was with a tip, and it does associate with a certain person, and they do seem to have that as their in on getting away with things. So are they directly CIA? No, but it seems like they get provided protection in an area near Thompson and Kirby relevant to HT operations and how they can distribute people from Portland, kind of like a Shanghai system that winds up going to other parts of the country. Weird that it's an actor that's known for Invasions of the Body Snatcher that plays Kirby. That would be Kevin McCarthy. And guys, those of you in America that know politics really well, you'll also understand that we actually have a Republican politician today that's actually quite popular, whose name is Kevin McCarthy. Weird, but he's also an actor that was known for a lot of 50s science fiction. You may recognize him. There he is right there. That's Kevin McCarthy, the actor. Again, not a uncommon name, whatever, right? But that's, you might recognize him, guys. He's been in Twilight Zone episodes. He was in the Twilight Zone 80s reboot movie, and he was in the original Invasions of the Body Snatchers, as well as the one made in the 70s in a cameo. So again, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, another one of those movies that's about somebody's soul effectively being absorbed by some outside entity or person or whatever, right? All right, then I put Stony Burke is a television series from 1963. In this episode, the Weapons Man, played by Silva's character, is suspected of performing a ritual sacrifice with a bow and arrow while conducting a dangerous stunt at the fair. So effectively, his character, they learn, is not even Native American. Like, he's like a guy that says, like, you know, I'm the chief, whatever, and I show everybody my masterful skills with my bow. He goes out to a fair one time, and then he basically ritualistically sacrifices a person by pretending to miss his mark. You know, he actually like sits there and aims it at his assistant or whatever, and then acts like it goes off into a distance and it kills somebody that wasn't part of the act. And it was actually ritualistic in nature, and he used a special bow and a special arrow and everything else like that. So the whole series is about investigating what was a ritual sacrifice done in front of everybody under the illusion it was simply for an entertainment, and they made a mistake. Not unlike what happened to Brandon Lee during this series of the filming of The Crow, right? Where they claimed that the blank went off, you know, that there was a real bullet in the gun when it should have been a blank and things like that. Something like that kind of happened here. Even weirder is how Silva's character references the Chunjin Council in 1963's episode of Stony Burke, but he also plays the character Chun Jin in John Frankenheimer's The Manchurian Candidate. I mean, it's weird, guys. So again, in this episode of a TV series, he says straight up, my father is dead, my brother is dead, my father was a man of honor. My father was a man of honor on the Council of Chunjin. Now, notice how that correlates to his character in The Manchurian Candidate. Here, he's playing the guy in Stony Burke, unrelated to Manchurian Candidate, yet they use the name Chunjin twice. Why? What would be the purpose? Because there's a reason why they're anchoring that. So there's the Manchurian Candidate. Again, you see there, he is in fact Chunjin. You see there? My father was a man of honor on the Council of Chunjin. All right. In 1964, Henry Silva appeared as Father Gabriel in TV series Breaking Point with a plotline involving stigmata and crucifixion. He plays a priest who investigates but prefers to keep the stigmata event private and hidden from the press. So in let's see here. He was in, wait, that's the wrong slide. Oh, crap. I put the wrong slide in there. It just occurred to me. I actually posted the wrong thing. My Hands Are Clean plot, though, he plays in this series as Father Gabriel. As Father Gabriel, here's the plot, you guys. Vincenzo is an Italian-American loan shark who develops the wounds of the crucifixion on his palms. He seeks help from the neighborhood priest, Father Gabriel, played by Henry Silva. The priest wants to keep the news of Vincenzo's stigmata quiet and contacts Dr. Thompson, but Vincenzo is resistant to the doctor. What'd I just say, guys? Thompson and Kirby. Tomb Map Sun. All right. Silva played the lead in Return of Mr. Moto, with a plot involving cracking ciphers, codes, and cryptograms used by the suspects. He said, that's all right. You know anything about codes? Codes. About codes. Yes, cryptography, that sort of thing. This is The Return of Mr. Moto, starring Henry Silva. Oh yeah, guys. So if any of you are curious, this is my playlist here. You can go into my channel and find it. Henry Silva TV film. All these things that I'm finding on YouTube, I'm putting inside that playlist. I have not seen this yet, and I'm looking for it. If anybody knows where a link is. In 1969, Henry Silva played Pandit Chola on Rod Serling's Night Gallery in episode The Doll, directed by Rudy Dorn. Now it's getting weirder, guys, because my dad is Rodolfo, Rudy, okay, Rod Serling, okay, directed by Rudy Dorn, Rod, Rudy. Silva's in it. Silva is Rudy's mother. Okay, guys, I guess it's a coincidence. The Doll. Those unfamiliar, Night Gallery is a little bit of an extension of Twilight Zone. It's something that he did, I don't know, several years after Twilight Zone went on the air. And it was mostly in color. And this was in season 1, episode 5, and it was with 2 other stories called Pamela's Voice, Lone Survivor, and The Doll. And he's in the episode called The Doll as, again, Pandit Chola. This is when it got really, really, really super predictive timeline-wise, especially when you talk about my material about Antifa, money laundering between the Chinese Communist Party, and how they're destabilizing America via these money laundering schemes of Bitcoin and all these other ways of like basically paying people in ways that are untraceable to a specific fiat currency. And I've done material on it, guys, and and other people have. And it's almost like, I feel like, I don't know, like the FBI is being willfully ignorant on this issue. Like they're going out of their way to not know something. But that's why I did this. I thought this was interesting that they would pick this as a name, right? Now, remember, guys, Masons are also into this benevolent, decent, God-loving, America-loving Masons also do these things. They're not all what you think they are, guys. So let me make that clear. I think a lot of benevolent Masons are involved with this work. Silva was General Shen Ti in an episode of Laredo, the bitter yen of Shen Ti. Guys, if you know all the things that I just talked about on Thompson, there's something going on with the whole Shen thing, and I'll just put it that way. Shen, Thompson, Kirby, I'll let you figure out the rest. Plot involves trafficking a woman held as a slave in Mexico in order to marry Shen Ti, who controls opium between China. Bitter yen is Bitcoin to yen. See, bitter yen. Why would you name an episode The Bitter Yen of General T? Because yen is money, and so they're calling the money bitter. Why would money be bitter? Well, it could be Bitcoin transmitted over airwaves, could it not? Smartphones are mostly how people transmit Bitcoin, bit, air, yen. Bitcoin being money laundered from yen to Bitcoin to pay people to destabilize the US. And how are they destabilizing the US, you guys? It is right there. This is how it's happening. It is the link between Mexico as a way to destabilize America through Mexico. And so don't always jump on everybody who has these rigid ideas of the border, even though, yes, some of them are in fact racist and xenophobic. I understand, guys. I'm not blind to that. Some people just want a reason to hate on somebody, and that's a great thing to do. Damn Mexicans, get the hell away from us, dirt. I understand it. There's something else going on, though, within border security relevant to how Chinese Communist Party, just like the CIA likes to taint governments all over the world too. Let's all own up to our bullshit, right, in every country. So yeah, the same way the CIA would do it, the CCP is absolutely going to establish things in Mexico because they want to have the perfect ability to swarm America with cheap drugs, criminal cartels, and everything else like that, and then blame it on Mexico the same way everybody else likes to do their things. Bad Mexicans. No, it's that the whole culture is being destabilized, and America's getting a dose of what this is like when everybody's in on the take, when you can't trust a single process to be completely 100% because everybody's willing to be bought because it's also effed. They want that to be America the same way it is in Mexico. In Mexico, you've got to bribe the security guard at the fucking parking lot to not get your car stolen. Otherwise, they'll call in a tip. Be like, yeah, man, this guy hasn't been here for a long time. I got a fresh one here for you. I think they're going to be inside shopping for a while. That's what's going to happen if you don't pay off the security guard. Do you understand that, you guys? This is the kind of the world we're in now. And so this was telling people from another timeline, please, you guys, when this information is arriving at your door about Bitcoin to yuan, yen, bitter yen, yuan, bitter yuan, bitter yuan, yen, yuan. I mean, guys, all of this. The bitter coin, Bitcoin to yen. I'm sorry, guys, I mispronounced that. Yen, yuan. I mean, whatever, guys. And yen is also a form of currency as well. So whatever. But the point would be, though, what you have here, though, are crypts and ciphers for it. Right? Look at this line here, guys. This is what I love. This is classic Masons. This is classic Masons that are good. They're telling you from another timeline. The wise man repairs the dike before it breaks. So in this very over-the-top, badly, I mean, he's a great actor, don't get me wrong. But if you saw it, how whatever like that, you would understand like how silly the whole thing is in its presentation. It's designed to be somewhat absurdist and in your face in this really bizarre way, having him play the guy in everything because he's telling you, just like Paul Mason is the producer, Paul Mason is the producer telling you, we got information from another timeline, and the wise man repairs the dike before it breaks. And how does the wise man do it? Make it fun, guys. Make it entertaining. Make it your career. Make movies. Make television shows, but keep it a secret. The Masons help keep the secrets. The actors just take their roles. They walk on. They walk off. I don't blame the actors for the nefarious activities behind their roles. I just don't. I don't even blame the Masons as a whole. There's so many people that could be doing all the things that are shady in the background that know the secret. But you can't assign blame to all these different groups in this blanket fashion. That's all I'm saying with this, guys. I think that good Masons were largely connected to this specific type of thing. But there are bad Masons. I'm not stupid. So the bitter yen of General T. Joe rescues Jem Singh, who is being taken to Mexico to marry General Shen T, the head of a major opium business. T is wanted in the U.S., so when he kidnaps Jem Singh and Joe, Parmalee decides Chad and Eric need some vacation time in Mexico. So again, guys, giving you a future timeline event to say that the way that they're destabilizing America is China bringing in cheap drugs into Mexico. They called it then the opium trade because it's what we associated drugs with. We weren't thinking about advanced forms of like, Molly and amphetamines and, all these exotic drugs back then. So they just had to come up with something that was more what they knew in the culture at the time. And that was opium dens and speakeasies connected to opiums. And that was more connected with criminal activities that were consistent with China. The Chinese were more in with the opium trade and getting like, that was their way of doing it back then even, like lull you in with the opium, you smoke it, you go into the speakeasy, then they can Shanghai your ass. You wake up after being drugged, you're put on a ship, and now you're slave labor, and you're addicted to opium. The Shanghaian economy, by the way, is it's a big part of it originates in the Seattle dock areas, as well as the Portland dock areas, and the families that have historically had access to all those things. I found using, guys, I'm just being straight up with you. I have found these people that I know. Again, proving it definitively is a whole nother thing, but the tips that I got and everything else like that, these people are so obscene about smearing the Silva name. They actually used it as a fake name as their legal counsel for doing some of these things that I know connects to all this that we're being warned about. They love to put the Silva name as the guilty party. So I'm helping you guys understand here that other people were doing things way back to try to make this better, okay? So I put Silva plays Ricky Hamilton attempting to woo Joey's love interest Barbara Simpson in the Joey Bishop Show, 1961 episode titled Ring a Ding Ding. The scene opens with Joey asking in jest for Barbara Simpson to have some plasma delivered from the drugstore. I am not joking. I'm not exaggerating. I'm going to show you some scenes here, guys. So again, guys, plasma and blood as market economies, human harvesting. And how would they pass this information without scaring the living crap out of people? Maybe in a comedic series starring Joey Bishop. Want anything from the drugstore? Coffee? He says, no, make it plasma. Thank you very much. And he lays down on the couch. Joey Bishop decides to sabotage Ricky Hamilton's date with Barbara Simpson and devises a plan to pass false rumors about Ricky to the men in the restaurant in hopes they will get jealous and start a fight with him, allowing Joey to swoop back in and get Barbara back. Again, guys, remember how he plays Ricky Hamilton? This is a cipher they use a lot. I'll also remind you guys that Luke Skywalker was played by Mark Hamill. And a lot of these things that I'm finding connect back to this film about Nazi technology and wizardry. It's an animated film by Ralph Bakshi, where Mark Hamill did the voice of one of the central characters involved with this Nazi timeline technology. That's an interesting fact because he did the voices for that Wizards film by Ralph Bakshi before he was ever Luke Skywalker. It's something he did before he was in Star Wars. Kind of weird, right? And I found other weird material connected to Mark Hamill. All right. In the series Thriller, 1961, Dark Legacy with Henry Silva as Toby Wolf, in a plot involving magic, a demon named Astaroth. This is where it got, what the hell just happened? All right. Thriller, 1961, Dark Legacy with Henry Silva as Toby Wolf in a plot involving magic, summoning a demon named Astaroth, and changing physical matter through spellcasting. The Lesser Key of Solomon is referenced, Astaroth, Aztor, Oztor Roth. Okay, Toby Wolf. A wolf is a lobo in Spanish. So again, guys, a lot of my disclosure material surrounded the use of the name Lobo, the use of the name, like my family names, and the use of the name Lobo together. It seems to be a cipher they use. I won't get too much deeper into that, but some of you who are doing shady things, you know what I'm talking about. So it says right here, to the Lesser Key of Solomon, and the margin here, he's written. So this is Astaroth's seal, according to the Lesser Key of Solomon. What makes this really weird, you guys, is this ritual that's done in the beginning of this Thriller episode called Dark Legacy is an actual ritual. I looked it up. And when they perform it in the series, it is a real Astaroth ritual. They're not even really making it up. And it wasn't the only time I saw it. It was also, and I might get into this later, it's in an episode called Night Gallery about, let me show you that really quick. Night Gallery. Oh, here it is. Yeah, Night Gallery. Ada. Since Aunt Ada came to stay. In this episode, a nearly identical ritual is done with a pentagram and the knocking of a stick to the what is that called? The Lesser Key of Solomon. It's almost done identically. The way these two episodes like merge and the actions of the witch relative to the wizard are almost identical. And the theme inside Since Aunt Ada Came to Stay is that there's a witch named Ada that's staying with this young woman, telling her that she's her auntie when she's really not. She just possessed the soul of her auntie. And she's really just a witch that's looking to occupy a young body. And the way she does it is by getting her to drink a powder that she drinks also with her tea every night. And that once she gets to a moon cycle and does this ritual and the woman goes to sleep, the witch says she'll occupy her body, and then the witch's body will die off, and then she'll become this young woman and occupy her soul. And it's the guy's wife, so he obviously has a vested interest in not letting this witch into his wife's body. So it was kind of an interesting plot line, but the ritual that's in that matched the one that you found in this episode that Henry Silva was in identically, right down to the symbol used and the things written in the circles. It was really, really strange. Why would the Astaroth thing be more relevant? There's so many reasons, guys. So Astaroth is in demonology is the great Duke of Hell in the first hierarchy with Beelzebub and Lucifer. He is part of the evil trinity. He is a male figure, most likely named after the Eastern goddess of Astarte. Guys, I oftentimes talk about the trinity of human energy as a positive life reaffirming concept. So what you have here is something that's nearly in opposition at a spellcasting level. That's the series that I'm referencing, guys. It's very, very good quality. I'd say if you're a fan of The Outer Limits and Twilight Zone or Alfred Hitchcock, then you should know about Thriller, because nearly all of those series had creators from Thriller involved with them. So it literally, when you're watching Thriller, it's like you're just seeing the earlier work of all those geniuses that did Twilight Zone and Outer Limits episodes. Even if you're just doing this purely as entertainment, which, you know, again, I don't watch any of it passively anymore. To me, it's all research now. But I do find that the Henry Silva's work is actually quite entertaining and very good quality. Even when he's doing low budget things, man, he tends to be pretty good. So Wolf, played by Silva, tells his friend that the Lesser Key of Solomon invokes Astaroth, who is a satanic messenger. He doesn't care because he wants to access the power for his magic act, and casually mentions being the next Blackstone. A magician then, but there are other Blackstones. All right, guys. Now, again, I have to tell you about this, but hang on. This is the dialogue you see exactly with Henry Silva. He says, Astaroth, well, if my memory of mythology serves correct, he was a prince of darkness, a satanic messenger. And then this guy says he doesn't care because he wants to be the next Houdini or Blackstone. Like, why? I get it, guys. Back then, Blackstone as a name was mostly used as a magician. And there was other like locations called Blackstone. It's not terribly uncommon. However, again, this whole thing I'm telling you back also connects back to Blackstone, not just the financial company Blackstone, but the fact that again, you know, I said that they had names of my relatives like Ricardo. His wife was Catherine, and she retired the same time as a guy named Carl Blackstone from the Department of Justice. And I really do believe that there's something involving that specific relationship within the DOJ that was part of my disclosures that's relevant to all this. So the fact that they had to drop that, he couldn't just say I could be the next Houdini. He made sure to say Blackstone. And then for some strange reasons, they incorrectly in the subtitles, they said read Diane when actually he said Rodan. So he said, I could be the next Houdini, Blackstone, Rodan. Well, my dad's Rudy and my mother's Diane. Rodan, Blackstone, Rodan, Rudy, Diane. Not the only time I've seen them combine these two things within the plot with their names. Then I just showed you guys that Blackstone was founded in 1985 by Peter J. Peterson and Stephen A. Schwartzman with $400,000 in seed capitals. The founders named their firm Blackstone, which was for those of you who still mock me in the family, a cryptogram derived from the names of the two founders. Schwartz is German for black. Peter, Petros, or Petra in Greek means stone or rock. The two founders had previously worked at Lehman. Anyways, we don't have to go deep into their history. It's not that important to the story. What is important, though, let's see here. I had most of my materials ready, guys. Bear with me here for a second so I can show you this. Just so you guys don't think that I'm pulling this out of my ass, I'm just going to show you something really fast. Sorry about my my crude language there, guys. I know most of you are used to it, but I think I got a bigger audience, even though my view count is low. There's other people who are going to be seeing this, so I don't want to offend them excessively with a lot of potty language. All right, it says Russia has blacklisted 4 U.S. Justice Department officials: Charles Seth Wilkinson, Ethan Ray Aronson, Catherine Warma, and Norman Barbosa. All right, I know you didn't see Blackstone in there, but that's why you need to see the next thing that I'm going to show you. All right, this is in fact my aunt that's married to my uncle Ricardo. Her name is Catherine Warma. Remember, Sharky's Machine had as one of the 7 code names Catherine. It was spelled exactly like that with a K. All right. So why is that relevant? That's why it's relevant, because the same aunt that you just saw, Sputnik reported is blacklisted from Russia, is married to my uncle Ricardo, who's in these ciphers, just like her name was in these ciphers. And the other one is in other places too. I just didn't get into that material tonight. But it says that he's leaving at a time when 2 other key fraud prosecutors, Carl Blackstone and Catherine Warma, are also retiring. I don't want to get into my theories on why these relationships exist the way they do, but I've strongly suspected for a long time that people with names like Carl Blackstone that are at the Department of Justice are oftentimes extension of other employees at the DOJ that are there as like aliases or cover or human shields, as a like not human shields, but like paper fiction shields that lead back to actors but aren't really accessible in any tangible way. Yeah, there's people out there that play them as characters, but they are extensions of other lawyers potentially. Not these people necessarily, but it happens. Now, the fact that you had 3 people leave the same time at the DOJ, that's what made this all fishy to me. It's like they all had the same job in the same department. They left the same time. And you're not backfilling any of these positions. And they handled complex financial crime and fraud and cybercrime and computer hacking and intellectual property. You lost 3 of them simultaneously, and you're like, yeah, well, you know, we've got a hiring freeze, so. Or did you just lose 1 lawyer and you had to pretend you lost 3? That's all I'm saying. I'm asking a question for a friend. You know that old phrase. Okay, Thriller was directed and written by John Brom and John Tomerlin. This is where it got super interesting, you guys, like with the puzzles and the ciphers. And I did a whiteboard on it, but I can't show it to you right now because it'd be too big of a pain in the ass to like do all that. But all right. So the Thriller was directed by John Brom and John Tomerlin. Now, guys, you can kind of see the cryptogram in there, right? Remove your common letters and names, bridge the common terms, and what do you get? You spell other words. Like, for example, I've said that people in my family are like the Pied Pipers of nuclear waste. Okay, the Pied Piper wasn't just called the Pied Piper. He was called the Pied Piper of Hamelin. John Brom, John Tomerlin. Can you see Hamelin in there if you're into cryptography? Do you see it? You should. Take out the Johns. Now you've got a whole nother cryptogram with the BRATOMER. Hamelin. Even if you take HAM, but you don't even have to. Just something for you to think about when it comes to cryptograms. Were there 2 guys named John Brom and John Tomerlin, or were they just Masonic code names that were part of the defense projects, also connected to the timeline-based drops that would warn us about future events. Because when you combine them, you get Abramelin. Sorry, I don't know how to say that because I'm not a occultist in that regard. But the book of Abramelin is relevant to occultists and demonology. And Abramelin oil is used in Aleister Crowley's ritual practices, which are sex magic rituals called Ordo Templi Orientis. A critical element is Abramelin oil, which is used in their cakes of light, which also integrates oftentimes blood and semen into them. Sorry to be crude, guys, but that is the fact. Used by the OTO rituals by Aleister Crowley, who produced from ancient mystic groups. So again, just so you can see it, these are the character names, like really interesting coded names. Mario Osperos. Well, look at that. Mario Osperos. Ross Perot. Mario Osperos. Ross Perot. Trippy, isn't it? Okay, Toby Wolf again. Monica Osperos. Casper, the friendly ghost. Ilka Windish. Monique Casper. He has Ross Perot and she has Casper. See, guys, this is how all these ciphers typically work. There's a bridge when you go into the names of the characters or even sometimes the actors. RIOAS pair, Ross, Rio Oz, Roz, Perot. Ross Perot. Those unfamiliar, Ross Perot ran for president back in the 90s. It was like the third party candidate, one of the only ones that ever really disrupted the system, like in modern history. Might remember him. Got a little guy named Ross Perot. Upset all the elections. Had big old ears, glasses. Anyways. No, he didn't have glasses, actually. That's right. But it says the book of Abramelin, reportedly written in Hebrew and recurred in most occult grimoires of the following centuries. Astaroth also features as an archdemon associated with Qliphoth, according to later Kabbalistic texts. And it also involves the Lesser Key of Solomon, and I'm going to get deeper into that also. Because this is where everything gets super, super weird when you connect it to me. So you see this picture from the Dark Legacy? Down here, and I think I have another photo of this, on his robe as he's performing this ritual that was a lot like that other Ada episode I told you about, you can see that that symbol, that's the symbol of Solomon, just looks like a pillar or a column that's on a hilltop. And I'll show you closely what that looks like. All right, so I need to stay on this topic before I move on to the I Spy things. Now, this one here, I have some supporting material and other slides here that I'm going to show you. This wizard performs this Astaroth ritual, which brings in Astaroth. Aster, Roth. Asters are a rich family. Rothschilds are a rich family. Asters in particular have a deep history near Portland, Oregon. They founded a town called Astoria, heavily known for having satanic connections, heavily known for having deep, deep Masonic connections also. It was very much controlled by bloodline families. If anybody who was a bloodline family wanted to control a trade, they were just given access to do it. What your opinion was mattered not. There's a whole history behind it. Why am I telling you this? Because take a look at, hang on. All right, this is the whole Astaroth thing, but you're getting into this whole thing about the Lesser Key of Solomon. And I want you to look at this before I show you what Astoria looks like, the main thorough of Astoria. Look at this symbol, the lesser column, the secret seal of Solomon. Now, part of my Ka Codex that I did on the Basis project and discussed with Miles Johnston was that I was told that some of the information I was receiving was relevant to the Temple of Solomon, and that a lot of it connected to the Astoria column in Astoria, Oregon. It just so happens that the Astoria column looks exactly like this seal of Solomon. Take a look. It's effectively a hilltop with a column. Now go back and forth between these, the symbol. That's Astaroth, the seal of Solomon, is part of it. Astaroth, Astoria, Astaroth, Astoria, Seal of Solomon looks like a pillar on a hilltop, which is what the Astoria column is. It's a big mound with a huge pillar going up, just like you see in the Seal of Solomon. Now, I've done material, guys, on Astoria. This is just my search showing you all the different things that I've done about Astoria, the filming of Goonies. These are reports from Astoria, Oregon. That one right there is from the Astoria column, 33, Exodus MK Ultra. And then I actually show you footage from the Astoria column in this clip right here. And I'm going to just show you a quick little snippet of it.
That relates back to that John Jacob Astor Luciferianist connection, then yeah, that you're really surprised. If they don't use Google Earth, they're using some form of Delorme or topographic software, something like that. It's necessary to do the job. And but the reason why Google Earth is good for
okay, what I'm showing you here, guys, really, real quick,
drill down.
I'm showing you this so that you can actually see I want you to be able to see the way that the pillar is on a hilltop that slopes just like the Seal of Solomon, okay?
And you can create like a sim tower and then put a little marker there, and then you can zoom in on the hilltop. So if you want to put a tower on the hilltop, you can put one here. You can see the reflection, and you can kind of look off in the distance, right, to know where it's going to see. And it helps you with line of sight so that you know how to design a tower properly. So that's how I became familiar with running azimuth lines and things involving grid lines. Now, I am not at all an expert in ley lines or grid energy. I don't know a lot about those things except for what I've been discovering over the last year. Now, in studying things that are involving the occult and Luciferian, satanic type societies, you start understanding that, yeah, they do play with numerology and angles and azimuth lines. And so it seems weird that, you know, like anybody who does engineering work, especially what I used to, they would have probably all the skill sets it would take to interpret a lot of this data and verify it. And I would like some verification because this is very strange and very bizarre. So, onto that. I was born in Seattle and then raised near, my first home was Bothell, Washington, just down the block from James Pettigrew, who I've talked about in another clip. Now, the Astoria column is named after the Astor family. So if you're not familiar with the Astors, people who study things like Luciferian and satanic society or cults, they'll tell you that the Astors play heavily into that dynamic. They're listed in bloodline families as being parts of those Masonic, or what some people would term the Illuminati families. I think you could make a lot of arguments about what is the true Illuminati, whether or not it's there's a Gnostic group of people that represent that, or if there is just a group of people that overtook by manipulating monetary systems. But that's another argument. A lot of people make the evaluation that the Astors were a part of that, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Excuse me. Excuse me. So this tells you a little bit about the Astor bloodline. It says the original founder of the Astor fortune was John Jacob Astor. But where this relates to specifically, what I'm talking about, you can read all this on your own. You know, he had Luciferian, Masonic connections, 13 families, part of those original occult societies. But it says here, this guy Astor comes along and in a few years totally owns the whole industry. Again, this could have happened, but because the occult power of the Astor family gave them the right, Obviously, others in the committee of 300 had to step aside. If his position in the hierarchy had not given Astor the right, believe me, the other families that originally controlled the fur trade would have gotten rid of Astor. One result of his fur company was that Astoria, Oregon, was created. Right, so that's relevant because John Jacob Astor was attached to that. That's Astoria, Oregon. Okay, so now we're going to get over to here. You can see Astoria, Oregon, where it is. This isn't that far away from me. It's about a couple-hour drive where I'm at right now. It's west of Portland. I've been there before, and I've actually been to that column. I have not had the climb to the top as of yet. The day that I went up there, even though I'm sure it's stable.
Yes, I did. I did get up there eventually, just to clarify that.
To a lot of high spots. Anyways, that's what it looks like. So now you understand there's a connection between that tower and a satanic coven. See, today, perhaps in honor of the family that originally took interest in it, Astoria is a real hotbed for the secret satanic covens in Oregon. John Jacob Astor did have a few helpful connections. 3 of his relatives were captains on clipper ships. He had connections in London to the Backhouse family. He married Todd, a family frequently associated with Satanism. His wife, Todd, was also connected to the influential Brevoort family. And finally, for some reason, John Jacob Astor was also on good relations with the politicians of the day. Perhaps most of them were Freemasons too. So we have some precedent here to say that there was Luciferian satanic worship type activities going on. We know they're into numerology. We know that they're into landmarks and ley lines and grid energy and placing monuments on hills because there's energy in mountains. I thought this was interesting. I kind of had an intuition about this. I had this lead. I don't remember where it started. This is just information comes to me. And it told me to research Asturias, which is, sounds a lot like Astor. So I don't know if this is meaningful or not, but I think that people studying genealogy and research and trying to decipher some of these things, this might be a lead. I don't know. That's besides the point, though. The whole point of this is that this monument was placed there very deliberately. Now, that's the location. Just to show you my methodology here so you understand where these lines came from. The way you do this is line this up north. This is your azimuth tool. So you can see where I was going with that.
Take a look now. So think about it.
North,
Hilltop.
About 0 degrees.
Astoria column. The secret seal of Solomon.
I measured that out pretty good. I know it's not showing up exactly, but it's pretty precise to 33 degrees.
That's a hill.
Now, if you follow the Freemasons' numerology, you know that the number 33 it comes up a lot, and they always say that 33 degree means you're a quote-unquote master mason. The thing that I discovered in my research is that it also is relevant to their ley lines. So it's not just a degree that you attain, it's also a number of the degrees that the lines point from their monuments.
Mm-hmm.
So assuming John Jacob Astor was a Freemason and a Luciferian or a Satan worshiper, whatever the terminology is.
I don't mind telling you guys, that is the main secret of the Masons. It's about 33 degrees as an angle or an azimuth. The major look is that it's about being important and the highest degree. There's always these little tricks on perceptions that are there to elevate you eventually. It's about, what are you motivated by? What are you trying to learn? Do you want to know the science? Do you understand energy? Do you understand the connection between earth brainwave to water frequency to everything that we exist in, that space and time don't really exist? That you can be a part of co-creating everything around you once you understand the secret. And then you just have to find others that are common in thought and whatever else like that. And yeah, you can actually bend the plasma field and gain, enormous amounts of influence if you're greedy, or you could actually seek to actually make things better for a much larger collective if you were able to access that power and you understood what you could do with it to help others. And so all I'm trying to say is, folks, is that it's become obvious to me that I am definitely tapped into a much larger energy source, that once I can master how to do that effectively, that I do believe that it'll resort in material wealth. at some point. It just isn't here yet. I've actually been in the complete opposite form of that most of the time, but not to any degree where I've been excessively concerned about my safety or livelihood. Sometimes, sure, but overall, I don't let it bother me because I've had such faith that this is all going to work out because of all of these connections that I find and am able to make. Okay. And this is huge. So what I'm showing you here, guys, is I don't have to get into the whole thing but I can show you really quick visually just by scrolling through. This is a 33-degree angle, that blue line that you see from Astoria Column. When you follow it out, it goes right to the freaking front door of the house I was effectively born into in Seattle, Washington. It's on my birth certificate, specifically in Bothell, Washington. It's at 718 222nd Street, Southeast, I think, or 718. It's 718. Yeah, 718 222nd Avenue. Okay. I have pictures of it. It's on my birth certificate and everything like that. Astoria Column, aligned at 33 degrees, goes straight to that freaking house. Right to that house. Okay. That's when I was going, I didn't do this, you guys. I don't know what's going on. So in this article in particular, I'm very naive. I did this years ago, and I still hadn't figured out energy or done all the research to know that I don't have to be worried by this. But yes, I'm definitely dealing with something of consistent influence of something that is way, way deep into esoteric traditions that I'm still not fully understanding. But I believe I'm on the cusp of grasping at a pretty significant level to where I can explain it logically and rationally to people that would mostly be on the fence about, does this thing actually happen? Why I learned that it kind of lines up with like movie things is because like while I was doing all this map research, I was watching a movie called Skin Deep by Blake Edwards. And I discovered that the same 33-degree line, right as I was doing this, goes right over Blake Island on the route to Bothell, where I was born. And as I discovered that, I laughed. I go, no way, I'm watching a Blake Edwards movie and the line goes across Blake Island. That isn't that remarkable in itself, except for that it synchronized at that moment. You would just have to trust me, guys, but I promise this happened. And then he goes, there really is a God, and he's a gag writer. And this big wave flows in and it knocks the main character played by John Ritter on his ass, you know, and everybody laughs and everything like that because of the absurdity of it. And that's how I felt at this moment. I thought everything's going to work out. I think it's going to be okay. God has a sense of humor. God has a sense of humor. God wants us to find this funny. God wants us to be enlightened and it not to be terrifying to us. God placed all of these things in front of us as challenges to see where our heart's going to go. So this was a beautiful lesson for me because I think what I learned from watching the work of Henry Silva was I had allowed my mind to go to some pretty negative associations overall without thinking about how much more complicated it could actually be, why there might be other layers of nuance that I hadn't explored yet, and why I needed to sort of like maybe reel in some of the conclusions that I'd come to at that point. I'm offering that to everybody. Like, I don't really know historically what's what with that, but I'm open to it being any number of possibilities. I would be disingenuous if I said it couldn't be something of malevolent intention in certain people's cases because they showed me their malevolent intention. They made it obvious. And in other cases, there was people that I think had to play a gray area of kind of looking shady so they could be close to the situation and just shut up and stay quiet. And I know who those people are by and large. I kind of get who they are. And I know I got a lot of assistance on the sidelines from them because if they hadn't been as middle ground and aloof from me as they had, they wouldn't have been able to achieve things at the same level, you know, as they could. Like there's a lot of people that I know just love me. And so if they get close to me, then it's going to be too obvious where the source of the help is coming from. Because it's so mutual, like how much respect we have for each other. I just don't think we could pull that off in any secret way effectively. Anyways, guys, not to get too abstract here or anything like that, but the point is that the deeper you go into this article, that Astoria Column doesn't just align up at 33 degrees to there. It also goes to the Richland, Washington Freemasonic Lodge, which is where the Hanford Nuclear Reservation is located. All right, so I'll just fast forward to that part. And literally what I'm telling you is one of these lines that you're seeing when I show you this video here. It'll show up in a second. Hang on. All right. It goes, one of those blue lines from Astoria Column winds up right there at the at the Richland Freemasonic Lodge, because it has east, west, north, south, 33-degree and 213-degree associations that are aligned with it. Again, the 33-degree angles. What is due west? It's 270 degrees. So when you line up where quite much like an arrow, this building is lined up, if you look, that's the rooftop of the Richland Freemasonic Lodge. And it's precisely, it's like a not a delta, but like a triangle arrow type thing where it points out. And then if you follow that, it goes to the Astoria column. All right, when you take this 33-degree line from the Freemasonic Lodge, it lines up with the farm that we lived on when I was living near Hanford Nuclear Reservation. When you follow the line that goes in the left direction, or that you see up there, it goes to the house that me and my parents lived in Central Oregon near Bend and Sun River area. This same Masonic Lodge lines up on that 33-degree line, and it also lines up with Astoria column. Astaroth. What is going on? Guys, I don't do this. I'm not satanic. I don't do ritual incantations and crap like that. But yeah, I was even going like, what is all this? But I think that it's basically what we're getting access to if you really look at it. If you take the light bearer approach and less the satanic, malevolent intentioned approach, you might find that, yeah, there might have been some people that went like, boo, or scary thing, or Nazi, or whatever else like that, because that's an effective trigger to get you looking deeper into, like, I'm going to catch that Nazi. I'm going to catch that bad guy. I'm going to catch that person. And then in the lesson, when you're trying to catch them, then you get this bigger lesson that's really supposed to unpackage as far as, what are you doing with this plasma field? How are you bending it? What associations are you making? And what assumptions are you making it to literally change things? That was my epiphany, my learning from all this that I wanted to share with you, that I don't know. I don't know where it all is, like who's doing what for what reasons. But all I know is that a lot of these people that I found this activity tied to, I've had extreme positive feelings towards my whole life. And the idea that they would have done something for malevolent intentions doesn't resonate well with me. Others I knew to be turds from an early age. And when they do something malevolent intention, it doesn't surprise me at all. And I report on that quite bluntly. The parts that I struggled with even more was the fact that some of the positive things that I think might have been done to help me did in fact originate from my grandfather, who is a child molester. And that's so freaking difficult to wrap your head around. It's almost like he wanted to be such a horrible person because he had to do these things. And then he wanted it there as an anchor so that I would reject the piece of the puzzle. I would just go, not watching the movie. James took me to see it. Not watching it. No, I can't. No, shutting it down. Can't do it. Trigger. Because that's kind of how it works. They'll treat you really shitty or gaslight you or fuck with your perception. Sorry about my language and everything like that. So that when they're required to do for you what they're due, they look like they're doing their job when they know subtly that they're really just trying to push you away from the information. So let me explain to you what I learned from this. I wound up figuring out that James took us to see that Excalibur film and Sharky's Machine in the theaters because he was anchoring the information. Excalibur starred Gabriel Byrne in his first ever movie role. Really, his first major film role by Gabriel Byrne. He's a main character in the film that gets killed pretty early on because he's drawn like a moth to a flame for the wrong woman and is in competition for rule over a kingdom. And in him getting this lust for this woman, it basically puts the entire kingdom under compromise, because his having to pursue that could cause jealousy amongst all the leaders and all this other crap like that, and just make everything fall apart. And then people would have to go to war over some guy's feelings. And so why would he take me to see a movie like that? Why? I'm not going to lie to you guys. Something like that kind of happened in my life, except that I don't think that I was the person that was like the moth to the flame to the whatever. But I do know that there was a time where somebody of a very significant power structure and a very powerful family was in fact in competition for a woman that I even was not working on pursuing at the time. She just opted to leave that guy and came to be with me. I did not woo her over. It was something that she had in her mind to do, to leave him. And then, you know, then when she was done with that, she came to me and said, would you like whatever? And then we did. We gave it another try. And that was just a long time ago. But I'm aware that the guy that she left was rich as hell and from an extremely powerful family that would almost be consistent with the power structure within the film Excalibur. And so the fact that he took me to see it, and then he wanted this theme embedded in my mind about a guy that was so in love with somebody that he was willing to like just lay everything to waste in pursuit of that, and even though it would cost relationships and everything like that, I was like, huh. Well, I you know, number one, I was never a person that even knew that I had anything connected to anything, or that any of these people were as powerful as they are. I need you guys to know that in sincerity. I went through most of my life thinking that all of my bloodlines and everything else was as average as anybody else. And I still think that. I don't think that anybody is special or requires special considerations in the classic sense. It's just simply that there is definite genetic connections to this information that is completely undeniable if you watch this presentation in its entirety. You can't deny it. It is absolutely undeniable at this point. And I have more that I haven't got to yet. I'm still working on it, guys. I haven't even begun to scrape the surface on how much information there is. I've only gotten into the 50s and the mid 60s to the late. I haven't even gotten deep into the late 60s in the careers of Henry Silva and Leon Askin. This is like part one into something that's ongoing. Research is definitive. It does lead into things. You can't deny it. The birthdays, the street names, the family names, it's all inside these films over and over again in repetition. And we don't have normal names. It's not like we're all like Bill and John and, you know, whatever. Joe, okay, that's common. But when they make reference to that, it's not just Joe, it's Jose. When they make reference that it's not just Joe, it's Joaquin, they actually go to that extent within the scripts and the roles. And Joaquin and Gabriel, while semi-common, that you don't find a lot of people with those names in the same repetition that you do other names. They just don't appear in repetition as often. Okay? So then when you find your uncle's names, your father's names, your grandfather's names, and all these other things, like, wow. Then it just gets to be way, you know, there's something deeper going on. There just has to be. So again, guys, I don't want to get too deep into like making you watch all of this material here relative to the Astaroth thing. But I just want to take a quick break in to say, can you guys at least agree that the Astoria column, if you were to think of a good logo for the Astoria column in Astoria, Oregon, that would be a good one. It's a hilltop with something that looks nearly identical to the column on top. And I get that it's an ancient symbol that's existed for hundreds of years, but space and time, when it comes to these people, doesn't really exist. It's all plasma being bent and what they're able to determine from a bent plasma field and manipulation and tapping into that at the core of it. Something that I think that they can do. And now with technology, others can do it. And it's reached a level of ridiculousness to where it's not just ancient mystics and super high ranking Freemasons and all the things that they could do with their magic. No. Now we're down to it's been industrialized, it's technological, it's hived into computing. There's people that can do it, and there's machines that can do it. So again, Seal of Solomon, the Lesser Key of Solomon, derived from the link called Astaroth that was in this episode called the thriller called Dark Legacy, where Henry Silva plays Toby Wolf, who warns his friends, you know, not to get into this. And there's that Seal of Solomon right there, the lower key of Solomon on his here, let me expand this. Right here is where you see it on his robe. It's kind of hard to make out, but that's it. And again, it looks like the Astoria column on a hill. And it's connected to Astaroth. It's just, guys, I don't know. The Astoria column has been a pretty figurative piece of all my research from the very beginning. So, you know. Okay, I'm moving on from the whole thriller thing. And by the way, guys, if you want to see Dark Legacy, that episode that I'm referencing in there, it is inside my Henry Silva playlist on my YouTube channel. It's towards the end of the playlist right now, but I am eventually going to put everything in chronological order so that people can research it as a more of a timeline based thing, because it's more relevant if you watch it step by step, like it's a breadcrumb trail that you need to watch in chronological order. That's what I'm learning. These projects bridge data set to data set, data set to data set. You go from one role to the next and you just learn things. It's just, all right. So sometimes I skip ahead, guys, and I apologize for that, but it's mostly because of the availability of material that I'm capable of watching or have the time to watch. Some of these things I'd have to buy something if it's not available for free, and I just can't afford to do that. All right, so I put Henry Silva played Dr. J. Akovic, the CIA psychiatrist who trains Bill Cosby and Robert Culp in one of the last episodes of I Spy. Bill Cosby is staring at a rodent statue and gets triggered to suicide after seeing raspberry ice cream and a sliver of cake. Highly relevant. I don't want to get into right now, guys, why that is, but a sliver of cake is a codex that's relevant to something that's going on with me right now. Sliver of cake is a way of communicating something else. And to those of you who are close to me, you know what that means. Raspberry ice cream, it has a whole nother context. Remember, guys, Bill Cosby won the Golden Raspberry at the Razzie Awards for what? Why did he get the Golden Razzie Award? What is Bill Cosby known for getting the Razzie Award for? I didn't put this in my Twitter post, but it just occurred to me. This is the clue. Guys, remember what he got a Golden Razzie for? Leonard 8, right? Let's take a look at that really quick. It's not Leonard 8 then, it's Leonard something. Hang on. Bill Cosby, all right. So Bill, those unfamiliar guys, Bill Cosby was a star of Leonard Part 6. Bill Cosby was the star of I Spy, a series that was on in the 60s with Robert Culp. Robert Culp was in a whole bunch of these Outer Limits episodes. The same, like band of actors tended to be with them, right? Is all I'm saying. But this movie is known for just being a total crap movie. And in it, it's a secret agent, Leonard Parker, is called out of retirement to save the world from evil genius Medusa Johnson, played by Gloria Foster. And again, this movie was mostly known for Bill Cosby receiving a whole series of the Golden Razzie Awards. So I thought that it's very telling that it's Leonard 6. Leon Askin, Leonard. Skinnerd. Leonard Skinnerd. It's a cipher. Yeah, think about it. Oskin, Leonard, Skinnerd, Leonard Skinnerd. So what you do is you take Ard, you take Skin, Ard, Leon, Ard, Skin, Ard. Is that how that works? I don't know how you spell it right, but that could become Leonard Skinnerd. What were they known for? They're mostly known for Sweet Home Alabama. Sweet Home Alabama, where the skies all blue. Weird, right? Ciphers, guys, ciphers. Why would they have Bill Cosby say raspberry ice cream and a sliver of cake triggered me to suicide. Just strange. So here it says the episode with Henry Silva. Hang on here. So I'll put this up. This is from IMDb. I pulled these slides here, and it says, from the episode called "Any Place I Hang Myself Is Home." And basically, I watched this episode, and Bill Cosby is suicidal in it. He just basically the whole time is like, "I don't want to live. I don't know what." It recounts this whole story to Henry Silva, who's a CIA psychiatrist, and it's revealed that he was kind of trained by him. That he's always been like going through all this psychological priming and programming through this CIA psychiatrist. And it says, in one of the final episodes of the series, Scott and Robinson relive how they first met in a series of flashbacks. Back in present-day San Francisco, Scott has been hospitalized after a failed suicide attempt. And again, that's when he gets triggered by a Rodin statue. Rodan is the wizard in the other episode with the Astaroth. Rodan, he looks at a Rodin statue. Not, guys, these aren't put there for no reason. Rudy and Diane are my parents. Rodan, Rudin. Scott Rudin, the producer, might want to look into that. All right. He is recalling for the psychiatrist Dr. Akovic how he and Robinson collided literally and figuratively in their first days of training for the CIA. Later, the doctor interviews Robinson, who recalls the same series of events from his point of view. Each of them tells of a working on a training exercise with the third agent, Wally. They broke into headquarters and discovered something in Dr. Akovic's office that none of them has the capacity to remember. Back in present day, the sight of the statue of Rodin, the thinker, triggers some disturbing memories and some radical responses. So again, when Bill Cosby's character sees Rodin, the thinker, doing this, it makes him think of raspberry ice cream and a sliver of cake, and then he wants to kill himself and just walks out in the middle of the street because somebody planted the trigger. Getting back into the theme of what? The Manchurian Candidate, starring Frank Sinatra, where he fights with Henry Silva, who was Chun Jin. And that has another parallel to another story. He played Chun Jin, but then he also mentions Chun Jin and Stony Burke. Stony Burke, sliver of cake. That's a hint for some that know more things than others. This is notable because Robert Culp and Henry Silva both appeared in multiple episodes of The Outer Limits and Alfred Hitchcock Presents. These creative teams are often involved with the timeline-related projects that function as information and entertainment simultaneously, all encoded. And getting back to their careers, here's Henry Silva. He's in 2 episodes, Tourist Attraction and the Mice of The Outer Limits. Robert Culp, also in The Outer Limits. He's in Architects of Fear and Corpus Earthling. He was also in season 2 in another episode. A Man Greatly Beloved. And Henry Silva was also in Alfred Hitchcock's A Better Bargain. And again, these guys all have these parallels where they cross over between Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Twilight Zone, The Outer Limits, and same writers, same producers are almost always involved with things that have relevant timeline information. I promise you. And I find Leon Chuluk is connected to many of these timeline projects. Leon Chuluk, Leon Askin. Chuluk, Chuck Liu, Charles Leu, low enriched uranium, the core they drilled to Leon, the core Leon. Leon Chuluk, you'll find his name all over these weird timeline things. And again, it's like one of those strange names. You're like, Leon Chuluk? Yes, guys, I'm not making this up. The true Godfather is known by many names and handed off like the Dread Pirate Roberts. A role play, if you will. Associate producers, Leon Chuluk and Michael Fenton, I Spy. This is when I'm like, what the F? Insight is a series that was like a Catholic television series at the time that was about global spiritual issues done in like these dramas, okay? This one's called The Capitalist, starring Henry Silva as Garcia and McConnell. And these guys disagree on whether or not they should run the family business as compassionate capitalists with communist revolution looming. So effectively, the whole plot is like all these people are out there going like, we're getting shitty wages. Everything sucks out here. We want new hospitals. Everything's crappy, man. We want the communist revolution to take over because you're treating us like crap. And so I thought what was really interesting about this episode, which I put a link in here for, and I would encourage you to watch it, is that the priest in the beginning of it says that right now we're at a moment in our society where what this episode's meant to do is make you think deeper about what can you as a rich capitalist do to prevent a communist revolution if you care. If you don't care, you are the greatest tool of the communists. A greedy capitalist who only serves themselves and does not even think about community is the greatest tool of the communist. This was the position of the Catholic Church back then. Doesn't appear to be their position today, but I thought that was really, really cool that the priest says that in the beginning of it. His name is Elwood Kaiser, by the way, which is super interesting. Kaiser, Mac, Connell, Elwood, Garcia. Okay. Lots of reasons that's interesting. McConnell suggests doesn't want to pay better wages or donate hospitals like Garcia, and suggests he not even bother running the day-to-day business. He suggests that Silva would want to take a cruise, perhaps. Cruise, like, yes, he says it like take a cruise on a ship. But cruise is another coded way of just saying the family name. It's weird that he makes a point to say, why don't you just take a cruise and we'll handle this. You know, he could tell him take a vacation, go on a holiday. But no, he says take a cruise. All right. So there's Henry Silva as the son that's taking over the family business, saying that no, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to be a compassionate capitalist. He wants to pay everybody higher wages. He wants to make the things fair and bring joy to the working class. And so his partner over here says, man, you know, I think you'd maybe want to take a cruise or something, man. Just go relax. We'll take care of things here. Your father's going to roll over in his grave if he finds out that you're paying these people decent wages. So again, here's the episode. You can see it's hosted by Elwood Kaiser. That's going to be relevant when I show you things from a Brian De Palma film that's connected to all these weird Outer Limits things, if I have time to do that. Which I do, appears. Yeah. Okay. Because I think this is the end of the thread now. I think I'm literally at the very end of this. Okay, cool. So now I can bridge a little bit into what I discovered with this whole thing with the Outer Limits and the chemosphere building, guys. So again, those familiar with my material, earlier in the year, I was out in the Hollywood area visiting some of the locations that were relevant to some of the things that I'm now discovering. It's almost like that I went out there physically is bringing the information to me etherically. And I'm knowing exactly what to watch and how to watch and where to watch it. It's so strange how it's all coming from. I think it's the fact that I literally set foot on the ground of some of these areas. What really got me deeper into Henry Silva relevant to Outer Limits was something I saw a long time ago but never reported on that I'm going to show you now, involving the work of a guy named Sean McCory. All right. Now, maybe before I do this, I should hang on. All right. So this is just to be clear. This is around the time about 5 months ago was when I was doing a bunch of these reports from Hollywood. And you'll notice here, guys, before I ever reported on this, I had discovered something involving Brian De Palma's body double, which I watched again yesterday, and how it connects to the chemosphere house, and a weird connection on how that all bridges over to the film Body Double and an episode of The Outer Limits that does connect everything that I'm telling you strangely, because it kind of proves, I think, something relevant to when you physically visit a location and you're familiar with these 33-degree angles. There's something about the way that plasma within the human body binds to these etheric grids that heavily seem to be entrained on this whole concept of 33s over and over again. It's just it's a constant with this. the 33s are always relevant, the double threes. So you'll see I was visiting not just that location that was relevant to Brian De Palma's films. He has some really strange abstract work. And I would say Body Double, out of all of Brian De Palma's films, is probably one of the most oddball strange of the lot. It did not get as good a reviews as most of his films, and a lot of people thought it was just crude and crass and disgusting. I actually think it's actually pretty brilliant and Hitchcockian when you really dig deeper into it. But yeah, he had some pretty interesting ideas for how he wanted to film it. If you look deeper into the research of it, he actually wanted it to be like one of the first explicit, like something that combined like adult film with a suspense thriller, where like nothing would be simulated when it came to the sex and the nudity and body doubles in that classic sense. I think that's actually what he was thinking about doing with it. I didn't know that until just recently. So I thought that was kind of a weird parallel, but I'm going to show you really quick this article I did in front of the Chemosphere House before I get into the rest of this, and then that'll be the end of the presentation once I'm done with all of that. Probably about another 10 minutes or so, guys.
Hey everybody, I'm reporting from an area outside of Hollywood here. And up here is off of Torreyson. This is called the Chemosphere, or the Chemosphere. This is a house that was used in Brian De Palma's film Body Double, starring Melanie Griffith and some others. And Brian De Palma, I found, is a lot of the locations that he picked in his films are very relevant esoterically. I found a lot of patterns with Brian De Palma's films, and specifically to a lot of the filming locations that he picked, the actors that he chose, and the themes of his films. And so this house in particular is kind of known as basically it's a pretty legendary piece of architecture here in the area. There's an elevator that takes you to the top there, and that has a view at the top there that can oversee the entire city. Pretty remarkable. And I just wanted to come out here and show it to you. I think this is about as close as I can get without going on private property, but it's pretty amazing. I think you have to agree. But yeah, I'll be probably doing a lot of revisiting of Brian De Palma locations, just because I'm telling you, it's highly relevant in everything that I've been researching. And I know that his study of energetics and cybernetics is going to be probably historically relevant at some point, would be my guess, if it's not already being made known now. But lots of clues in Body Double, lots of clues in Blowout, lots of clues in Scarface. They're all full of clues.
All right. So there's the house, like the staircase that you used to get up. Okay. So I just want to show you the like why this is kind of relevant. Is I was studying. What was weird is, guys, as I was driving around Hollywood, there's this film called My Chauffeur, and Sean McCrory is like one of the stars of My Chauffeur. He plays this benevolent Irish, like, limo driver that helps Deborah Foreman's character get acclimated to the world of limousines and things like that, and fancy culture and things like that, because she's kind of like a rocker and, riot girl type personality. And she's like, they can open their own damn doors, and I don't like these people. And he's like, oh, girl, you have to see the beauty of what we're doing with these cars. And, he's like that classic Irish personality, right? What we all love about the, about their culture, I think. Here's his Sean McCrory, and I don't have anything from My Chauffeur prepared, guys. I'll have to do that another time, but he's in that movie. And what's weird is I was driving around that area, I actually drew a correlation between a physical location that's referenced and filmed in the movie My Chauffeur that he appears in, that leads to the Chemosphere House. And My Chauffeur is just some random TNA movie from like 1985. I mean, it's got a lot of nudity in it, really crass and crude humor. Penn and Teller are in it, and some pretty epically funny roles, to be honest with you. I mean, it has definitely some great moments to it. Kind of a sweet-natured movie, to be honest with you. It's really not a bad TNA movie. It kind of throws you off in its sweetness. So, even though it's crude and crass at times. And so our family basically as a whole has always loved My Chauffeur for that reason. We all kind of like it and agree on that as a group, even those I'm sure of us who don't get along anymore. I'm sure the one thing we agree on is that My Chauffeur is pretty epic as a comedy. But yeah, it stars Deborah Foreman, and she was in Valley Girl, and this guy plays like her mentor in that movie. And it says, what I thought was really weird is in The Outer Limits, he goes, they haven't permitted anything like that since 1986. And so that's about the same time that My Chauffeur came out. That's about the same. In fact, I think My Chauffeur came out exactly in 1986, if I'm not mistaken. And then Body Double was being made about 1983, 1984 timeframe. So the fact that The Outer Limits, which this scene right here is in that chemosphere house you just saw me reporting from. So trying to draw this all together, guys. The chemosphere house is where they are right there. Okay? And so that's basically the scene in The Outer Limits of the guy going up the house you just saw me reporting in front of in that last video thing right here. Like this thing here that I just showed you. That's the house.
Buddy.
Just to put it in context, that house is that. That's how you get up to it. All right? I was there 5-6 months ago. That's the scene in Body Double that's nearly identical to the one in Outer Limits. They show you this thing going up the staircase, so you can see that it's both the chemosphere house and both there. That's the better view of it. And then that's it in The Outer Limits, on the inside and on the outside. All right. So that Sean McCrory is featured as the owner of the chemosphere house in The Outer Limits that Henderson James goes to for advice. Remember, guys, my grandfather is James Pettigrew. The connection in Sharky's machine goes to Henderson. James, Henderson. Those in my family, just get over your ego issues and admit that you were wrong. Sorry, man. I'm not trying to be whatever, but I'm just like, I don't deserve to like be like this much of a black sheep. I just don't. And I know some people in my family really malign my reputation amongst you. So I hope you feel comfortable reaching out to me and talking to me, because I would love to hear from some of you. Really, guys. Feel free to email me or something like that, because the way this all went down is really sad to me. It just is. It is. But there's the house.
Reporting from.
All right. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to find that other clip that I did in the LA. It's not there. Let's see. Hollywood. Oh, Cohan. That's right. That's it right there, actually. This is where it all connected to Sean McCrory and his project.
My Chauffeur, which I watched.
All right. And I'm going to close on this, guys. But yeah, this is basically the same time as I went out to the chemosphere house. I went out to this whole Beverly Glen Drive, which is an address that's mentioned in the film My Chauffeur that I watched over and over again with my family when I was growing up. And what I believe is going on, folks, is that this creates like loops of perception that bind to actual things in physical reality through magnetic loops, through magnetic spirals, that just simply watching a film in repetition on certain locations has this effect on your ability to gravitate towards information and for it to gravitate towards you. And you become like a magnet of information the more times you experience this in multiple locations. So like classic television shows that I watched when I was a kid, when I lived on one hilltop, and if I watch it at the farm hilltop, and then I watch it when I'm in Vegas on a hilltop, if I watch it when I'm in certain coastal locations in Oregon and California or wherever it seems to make a difference, like the synchronicities when I'm near locations that have heavy amounts of quartz or water flow or kinetic energy, then this physical reality bridge to the etheric things, especially when it comes to Hollywood, music synchronizing with your activities at the moment in ways that are highly unexplainable, or a scene in a movie that does it very similarly, where you're like going, that couldn't be a mistake. It feels that way at times, even though, yes, synchronicity does exist, but you'll find it's amplified, I think, in areas that are heavy in quartz concentrations, heavy with kinetic water flow, where there's either artificial or natural concentrations of a lot of I think that quartz and granite concentrations in certain areas, or the like pixie dust effects on reality, that we're just now becoming aware exist, and that it may be like a science that we just hadn't figured out yet. And I think what's making all of this resonate stronger is so many artificial electromagnetic fields within our ionosphere now from the cell tower technology, that it's the entrainment on those quartz concentrations at the soil, at the pixie dust quartz level, that's creating these sort of hived events where the human mind is basically being bridged into these algorithms that create the perfect ways for the cell tower databases to hand off from tower to tower. It's like the mind on a subconscious level begins to take on the same types of self-organization and ability to grasp information from the aether like the towers are. Because there's crystal concentrations that surround the pineal gland within the human brain that would be interacting with it similarly. And so if you can remove yourself from the ego of this and just say like, wow, this makes sense. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's really just that some of us are just sort of related, and it's just this bizarre concentration of electromagnetic fields pulsing the rock that has quartz concentrations, with the knowledge that it's crystals that are in every smartphone, crystals that are in every computer processor, doing all the central processing of all information globally. And if it's inside your own brain where you have crystals surrounding your pineal gland, you would be experiencing many of the same anomalies without having any special technologies in some cases, let alone anything weird and experimental that might be going on. It's a whole nother topic. So synchronicity is explainable. That's all I'm saying, guys. And I'm not going to get deep into the scientific thing now. I would really encourage you to go look into Trinity of Human Energy presentations that I did like about a month and a half, 2 months ago. I haven't been doing that many live presentations lately, guys, so it's not far back you have to go. But if you look into Trinity of Human Energy, the ones that I did in May and June-ish timeframe, that's where the real crux of how this is all working is. That'll really help you get the core fundamentals of like your prerequisite to understanding why is the weirdness happening, what are the organic mechanisms within the human brain that could be making this happen. Then you can start to unwind why technology could also play a role. So I'm not blaming technology or saying this was any deliberate plan. I just simply think that at a subconscious level, we are just beginning to do very much highly sophisticated self-organization, hive mind to hive mind, cluster to cluster, brain to brain, and it's going global. And we're becoming this hive together supercomputer in a way as a collective hive mind, not losing free will in the classic sense, but I do think that it has that effect on certain people where they begin to submit more and more of their will over to more of a central database and way of thinking, and they stop thinking independent. So don't lose that part of yourself. I think it's really great in a way. Some of the side effect feels kind of cool, I guess. But I really wouldn't want this to be my organic life experience indefinitely, feeling like I'm this synchronized with information this weirdly. It's kind of cool, but it's also very bizarre. And it's led me to want to get more explanations, which I think a lot of this research has led to. And I think actually, I know in the upcoming future here, I'm going to be getting much deeper into it and putting it together into something more cohesive and visual. But until then, I would encourage you to look through like energetics parts. I'd say if you look from energetics parts 6 through the last one I did, 6 through 11 is where you're going to get the really good part of the information, all about how this could be happening with human brainwave, timing of frequencies and signals, crystalline structures, and how everything turns into sort of a cybernetic grid, whether it's machine or human, and how these things could be merging. And then all the things going on with Hollywood going back to the 40s and 50s, 60s, 70s. it really does make sense. And I hope this explained it in a way that was respectful and giving all full consideration of the possibilities for all the people involved, who I do mostly appreciate and want you to know that I have a new way of looking at this and a perspective on it that I did not have before. So on that note, thank you very much for watching and have a good day.